Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 6th, regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee, and we have a lot of our committee present. Um, I am Josh Princeman, Councilor at Large from Ward 4, Chair of the committee. To my right is Councilor Julia Malachy, Vice Chair of the committee. Also joined by Councilor Bridget Charm, Councilor at Large from Ward 5, Councilor Martha Bixby from Ward 6, Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8. We are being audio and video recorded. We have a couple of items before our budgetary discussions tonight, both of which are for the schools. Liam Hurley, Assistant Superintendent, I understand you are here to present those. Let me introduce, I think we're going to do one at a time, but you correct me if that's wrong. First item is item 150-26. This is the appropriation of $325,000 of the June 30th, 2025 certified free cash for NPS and science curriculum. Mr. Hurley, why should we approve it?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Can you hear me here, folks? Yes, okay. All right. Yes, so this is very exciting for us in terms of our adoption with curriculum. We had presented to the school committee back on April 30th about kind of some of our curriculum adoption. This is a $325,000 purchase for a program called Open SciEd. We've gone through a vetting process and have adopted this for our K-2, and this is actually our 3 to 5 adoption. So this is a lot of basically materials that we need for our elementary school curriculum that we're going to be having rolling in. This is really the one-time big purchase. Afterwards, after this adoption, which we really will be for next school year, we'll probably need something out of our operating budget of about $50,000 per year for this. So I expect that to be really in the operating budget. But this is really the benefit of this is to get that big chunk of money to help basically procure this big round of materials that we need for this purchase. So that's essentially it. I'm not the educational expert. I know that sometimes I get some of these questions. I could get Dr. Nolan on the phone as well if we need to go down that, but this has been vetted. It's been vetted by a number of sources, obviously internally and externally. And so this is the curriculum that I believe that I know Dr. Nolan, our teaching and learning director, Gina Flanagan, and our science coordinator, Liz Everett Butler, have all looked at and want to proceed with.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I will mention that we've been joined by Councilors Maria Greenberg and Councilor Lyle Baker, who are members of the committee as well. So there are now 7 of us, I believe. Any questions for Mr. Hurley regarding the science item? If I understand correctly, this is appropriate for a free cash transfer because it is essentially a one-time expenditure. As you said, there will be maybe $50,000 in terms of ongoing operating budget, which will be incorporated perhaps in future years.
Correct. Yes.
All right. Seeing no questions, can we get a motion?
I just had one quick question, then I have to move it.
And as it turns out, we have a question. Councilor Malachy.
How many years is the package or curriculum expected to be good for with the annual updates?
Good question. So I think that the Dr. Nolan looks at these as kind of like 5-year cycles. It could potentially 5 to 8 years. I know that she's looking at different areas. So hopefully this is a good chunk of time. In the past, we had not done this curriculum adoption that we've been kind of on more of an aggressive campaign that we're on now, which I think is great. But, I think at minimum we're 5 years and potentially longer. I mean, they vetted this. We've been looking at this now for a few years. So I think it's going to be quite some time. And then once our teachers are up and running with the program, unless there's something compelling, I think they would probably want to stick with this for a while.
And this is part of the effort to make sure all the elementary schools are kind of getting the same content.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I'm happy to move it.
Councilor Malachy has moved approval. Any discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0. Thank you. Next item is item 153-26. This is the appropriation of $500,000 from certified free cash for full-day kindergarten aides. Mr. Hurley, would you like to tell us about the kindergarten aides and a lawsuit and why we're doing this?
So, yep, this has a little history that I'll try to keep short. I believe it was in FY20 when we moved to full day kindergarten. We had at that time agreed in the contract with the teachers bargaining unit, to have some language that says for every full day kindergarten classroom, we will have a full day kindergarten aide that has 14 or more students in that classroom. Fast forward a couple of years in FY24 through the difficult budget process, we decided that that would be an area, and we were given some advice from outside counsel that there would be an area that this would be a management decision, and we made a budget reduction of approximately 50% of that staffing and went with the model of one kindergarten aide for every other classroom. So to be kind of a kindergarten aide covering two classrooms, if you will, in a school. So the benefit at that time was approximately, I believe, about an $800,000 savings for us at the time for that cost. And again, it was part of a budget process, part of a budget reduction. The NTA bargaining unit, NTA group went through a arbitration process and subsequently prevailed. And the arbitrator ruled that language, stood, and that the committee needed to have those positions in force. So that was actually probably feels like maybe about a 2-year arbitration process. So we got that ruling. I think it was potentially this past November. So in January, we hired back approximately 17 humans, which is about 14 and a half FTE. These people are not, each one is about a 0.8. So the $500,000 is again approximately about a half-year cost for the full-day kindergarten aides that we're adding back in. So these are technically not teachers in the Unit A. These are our paraprofessionals, which are our Unit C group. Their salary and benefit for the year, including, is typically with benefits, averages around mid-$60,000. So this cost, which we're very, very thankful to the mayor and his team for helping us. We did not budget for it. It was something we did discuss as part of the FY26 budget. Ultimately, we did not budget for that. We knew it was a risk. Last year, we were not able to fit that in. The arbitrator did not rule in our favor, and we're now have needed to add those positions back. So they are back and they've been hired. And so we're coming before you to ask for that as kind of a one-time infusion, obviously for FY26. It was not budgeted, and we now have incorporated that into FY27. And again, thankful to the mayor and the city council for the generous budget we're getting in FY27, which supports the full year cost. So I hope I covered the basics there.
You did. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. And to summarize, I think what I heard, this covers essentially January to the end of this fiscal year for those kindergarten aides, and the kindergarten aides are included in the budget for next year, which this committee.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. I will mention very quickly that we've been joined by Councilors Pam Wright, Randy Block, and Julie Irish, not members of the committee, but certainly welcome to our discussion here. Any questions or motions on this item? Councilor Bixby.
And apologies, I was just making sure my kid wasn't left on a rainy field by himself. So if I missed this,
Was he?
I don't think so. I think they're people there. How are we on staffing for this year and going into next year? I think so. Sorry.
Specifically for the full day K aides? Yeah, so this is a pretty popular position for us. I think a lot of staff look at this as a way to actually get to become a teacher for us. So it's a desirable position, and so we were able to hire almost all those positions by the end of January. So there are other positions, there are other Unit C positions that are more challenging to staff, but we did hire all those positions.
Thank you for the funds. All right, well then, I'm happy to move approval.
Councilor Bixby has moved approval. Councilor Charm.
I also had one quick question. Thank you, Mr. Hurley, for the detailed explanation. Makes a ton of sense. I'm supportive. I'm just curious, approximately how many of our kindergarten classrooms are above that threshold where they require a full-time aide over 14 kids?
That's a good question. I think almost, and it is a kind of a strategy question, because it's something that we need to look at, I think, now and in the future. If we did have a classroom under 14, that aide would not be required. Just keep in mind, if you played this out a little bit, if you did have a classroom, let's say of a 13, if you did have one move in mid-year, you're then adding an aide. So there is some kind of risk reward to that. But I believe almost, other than potentially one classroom, every classroom was above 14. So that's kind of the situation we're in. Every year, though, our full day kindergarten, that's actually our most difficult area for us to actually project in terms of estimates, in terms of numbers of students. So there could be some fluctuation in the future, and it is something I think that you raised an interesting point that we've discussed internally as well, that we need to look at. If we can go below that, there's potential savings for us as well.
That means that if we had previously had one for every 2 classrooms, we added 17, we have roughly 34 kindergarten classes and 34 kindergarten aides across the district.
Yeah, there's actually, I believe it's 39 total kindergarten classrooms. We had approximately 17 previously, and we've had to add, again, in terms of total bodies, I think it was actually 21. And so we've actually added, I believe it was 18 bodies, which is the equivalent of about 14 or 15 FTE. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's the total number of classrooms, full day K classrooms.
I'm happy to move it.
Already been moved. Councilor Bixby has moved approval. So thank you for the unnecessary second. Any discussion on Councilor Bixby's motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and I've been corrected. It is 6-0. I still think Councilor Greenberg is on my committee, but she is not. So, thank you, Mr. Hurley.
Thank you, everybody.
Tonight, but I know you won't.
Okay.
All right, let's get on to our budget. I will mention a few. We have many distinguished guests with us this evening, but I will mention very quickly that John Rice is here, the Chief Community Services Officer. You bet. Is here. Online, I see Josh Morse, the Chief Operating Officer. That's correct. And Dana Hanson, the Chief of Staff. Yes. I mean, how about a round of applause for me? Okay. And again, several department heads who we'll get to as we take up their budget. So the first one I have on the list here is the City Clerk. Mr. Wilson, do you want to come tell us about the City Clerk budget? And for all our department heads, thank you. Thank you for being here. We truly appreciate brevity. And we'll try to keep our questions limited. I know I speak for the whole committee when I say we understand that you don't want to be here all night. Mr. Wilson.
If there is anybody in the room that would rather follow brief slides.
Sorry, you want to sit over here so that people online can hear you and maybe they can hear you a little bit better? Yep. You mind?
Microphone goes that way.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got hard copies of the slides. If anybody rather read them that way rather than on the screen. Yes.
You're going to talk a little bit about the presentation now.
Yeah, slide up. Thank you. Right, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, which is hopefully not a lot of you at this point, I know. I'm Drew Willison, I'm the city clerk and clerk of the council. Let me start by giving a quick thank you to a lot of the members of this committee. Most of you were very involved in my hiring summer. I'm having a very good time. I've been here just over 6 months now. Found it challenging and exciting. I don't love the commute, but I opted for the commute, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So thank you. So the city clerk of the council budget request for next year is $2,704,972. There may be some sense there, but I'm unaware of them. That is just within a couple of dollars one way or the other, the $30,000 increase. There are some puts and takes there that I'll I'll talk about, because there's actually a little more money above the current year available. A couple of things that have moved out of our department, I'll talk about those when we get to them. Those of you who don't know, 89% of the city clerk and clerk of council's budget is salaries and benefits. So I'm anticipating a question at some point about what I do with more money. I've got a pretty good idea what I do with that, or what I do with a little less money. You probably have a pretty good idea with that. So pretty under that. So, before I get to the slide deck, more detail from the budget, let me talk quickly about a few increases and decreases. Most of the increases that you see and individual line items are increases in salaries and benefits, and very little on the expense side. But on page 1 of your budget book, you'll see an $11,000 reduction for software maintenance. That is a good thing. That represents 20% of Ruth and IT's in the IT department's time. We are no longer going to need that because of the selection and now implementation of the new document tracking system. So that money has disappeared from our budget. Initially, we thought we might be paying for and the procurement costs and the operating costs of the new document tracking system. Out of our budget, the mayor's office made it clear to move those funds into the IT department. So the new system comes with maintenance and 24-hour support, and so the need for us to maintain that system and then sort of patch the software is going away. So there's a $5,000 reduction also on page 1 in inaugural expenses. It's with at least hope we don't have an inaugural in the next fiscal year. On page 2, there's a $10,000 ad for census posting and mailing costs. Census mailing and post office charges are all done by a contractor. So it looks like a sizable increase, but it actually puts us back to where we've more traditionally been on that line item. But that process gets a little bit more expensive every year as well. On page 3, there's a $4,500 ad for enterprise-wide training, which you'll see when I get into the slide deck in a minute. One of the things I really emphasized when you all interviewed me, and what I've emphasized to staff, is that I'm a big supporter of training. So a relatively modest ad to a relatively modest training budget, base training budget, but it's important. We've had a lot of turnover, as you know. I expect we're going to talk about that a bit. And we've got a relatively new and soon to be added to election teams. So there's money set aside in the budget for internal training, both for leadership, for specific items, and also just a little bit of training set aside for people who want to pursue things that are at least arguably related to their job, to their current job. Maybe a little leaning towards where they want to go with the next one. On page 4, there's a $3,000 ad for advertising publications related to elections. Because it's a presidential, not a presidential year, it's better than state election, that budget tends to go up a little bit when we've got a big statewide election. Then a $3,000 ad for voting supplies, better than the state election. That budget also tends to go up and down a little bit depending on where the election is. This is going to be a big election. We're expecting a big turnout. So we also have we do an annual pizza party. Some of you were kind enough to attend for election workers this past year. And one of the things that indicated to us is that they wanted additional supplies, pens, tape, signs, things like that in the bags that travel with the voting machines. So we're trying to accommodate that. Already mentioned that note on the document tracker. So if you don't mind going to page 1. I'm going to start in a weird spot, but I think it'll both generate some questions, probably answer some questions. The org chart that is in the budget book is no longer up to date. We've done some hiring and promotions since then. And in the book, it sort of anticipates the combining the election supervisor and the deputy's job, but all of the puts and takes haven't been done. So I'll walk you through this a little bit. I currently have 3 vacancies in my department: deputy, city clerk, and election manager, which is it's a combination of the old election supervisor and the deputy job. We lost our election supervisor in January, and then Cassidy left fairly early in April. So it gave me an opportunity to combine those jobs, make the new deputies first amongst equals on elections. Part of this is born out of necessity. We offered a fairly reasonable, what I think it was a reasonable salary range, and got very little in the way of qualified applicants. And I left the position up for a while. We posted it in all the usual places, all the usual job boards. I posted it myself as a member of the International City Managers Association, and it was fairly grim. So the opportunity presented itself when Cassidy left, and I think it's a good way to go. If I had a thought about the way the deputy position job description was drafted, it says assistant clerk, assistant clerk, assistant clerk. I think it's a better opportunity and a better career path sort of thing to sort of let the deputy emphasize one thing while I emphasize the major vital and probably important account. I think it's going to work out well. All 3 of these jobs have been posted. By the end of the week, I've done 20 pre-screening phone calls with promising candidates. And I'll tell you, I think I'll be able to fill these jobs very well. A couple of very, very promising deputy candidates. So born of necessity, but I think it's ultimately a good decision. The other 2 vacancies are the vitals and election specialist. That job is vacant because we promoted the person who was in that job to Sammy Schumacher, who many of you have met, to the elections and outreach coordinator, which has been vacant since March. She is the person who handles our outreach and recruits teams poll workers, which is going to be a huge issue this year. She's jumped right into it. She's contacted all 250 that are on our database. She's simplified the application form that had grown to 4 pages for reasons unknown to me, back down to a more appropriate one that captures all the information we need, all the information the state. So she's making good progress, but she leaves behind a vacancy there. I've got a lot of good applicants for that job. The other job that's vacant is also because of the promotion. It's the compliance coordinator on the right. That job has been, oddly enough, a launching pad for committee clerks. Cassidy Flynn, Katie Holden, and our current chief committee clerk, Lisa Pinnell, all started in that job and moved over to the committee side. And Curtis Brucker was who was our compliance coordinator, is our newest committee clerk. He took over land use and is doing so far a very good job. So those last 3 jobs, I'm planning to do formal interviews and panels, probably starting after next. Try to make a very quick decision, and then get the contingent job offers out so we can get people to move. So I'm confident by the middle of July, we're going to be back to our full 15.
Can I just add, while you're here? In the past, we had experienced, I would say the clerk's office had experienced some difficulties hiring. There was speculation as to whether it was because the salaries were not at the appropriate level, whether there was a dearth of candidates for a number of reasons. Do you feel like you have sufficient candidates, sufficient options to choose from, that the salaries for these positions are set in the right place?
For all 3 of these positions, I've got lots of qualified applicants who are quite eager. We can always argue that people deserve to be paid right. People deserve to be paid, and everybody's always eager to get a pay increase if we can. But for these 3 open jobs and for the committee clerk jobs in particular, we don't have any particular difficulty recruiting. The one exception to that was the election supervisor. It's a big job. You take a heck of a beating in this day and age for that job. So it's a fairly specialized skill. So we just had a tremendous difficulty Cassidy tried to recruit at some of her training conferences, some of the International Courts Association, New England and Massachusetts had very little difficulty. The job boards didn't get this much of anything. So that job may be the exception. I think we're doing okay.
That's it. To follow up on that question.
Please, you okay with a couple questions while you're?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just on that role, I think my question is whether Secretary Galvin's office has anybody in our agency. We sort of pursued that, and I just I'm assuming you pursued that, but that's just the other.
A little bit. They don't. My sense is they don't think of themselves as a job board. They know very well that on elections that we've got the Massachusetts Clerks Association that all of us belong to, New England clerks that most of us belong to, and that for training purposes, most of us also belong to the international.
I should be more explicit. How about anybody that works there? Is that a problem?
I did not, in the couple of calls I made inquired about this. I will be honest and say that I did not offer to relieve them of their employees.
Sure.
That is a good idea. I will, the next time we're in this position, I'll be a little more aggressive about it. Anybody else on that? Because I think we'll move on from there. Again, the bottom line there is by middle of June, no later than the start of July, we're going to have a full again. And
Great.
my sense is we do not have any vacancies coming anytime soon. So I think the environment and the culture, you all may ask about that. Some of the tension in the room has been let out. My belief, and say this for the record, is that everybody's doing the job. They're working hard. It's what you need to be doing. And I'm actually very proud of them. They sort of responded to some of the things we needed to do. This is sort of the fun stats and statistics kind of stuff, part of the presentation. This is these are all calendar year 2026. It's hard to track these things by fiscal year for us. You all held 184 meetings of various sorts last year, committees, subcommittees, the council itself. And there may be a couple other things that are included in that have a lot of the same requirements. It doesn't include the school committee, it doesn't include the neighborhood associations, but a good number of meetings. It's actually a slight increase from the previous year. Special permits are pretty much flat, 59. I think that came down from a total of 61 the previous year. Just because I had trouble fitting it on the slide, I say ordinances passed. The vast majority of work you do is modifying existing ordinance, city ordinances. You passed 19 of those last year. There were a total of 376 docket items last year, which is actually a little bit of a decrease from the previous year. Miles, there we go. On the vitals, I think our office is a three-legged stool. Accounts is the first leg of the stool, then the vitals department is the second leg of the stool. Because we are considered a birthing community because of Newton Wellesley being located here, which is how the birth certificates, regardless of where the parents live, if the baby is born in Newton, the baby gets registered in Newton. So there were more births last year than the previous year, up by about 100 or two. There were fewer deaths than there were the previous year. We did 638 marriage intentions, regardless if people could apply. If they live here, they can apply for their intention here. They can get married someplace else if they do their intention here. People from other communities come here to file intentions, particularly when we're doing more weddings in the chamber than we currently are. 638 is a pretty good number. These next two numbers need to be combined. The total dog licenses issued, which are people who just want to license their dog, was just shy of 3,000. But there's also a dog license that runs with the off-leash permits, and people who plan to walk their dogs off leash because they know those parks are patrolled. As a general rule, they're more diligent. They're going to use the off-leash parks about getting dog licenses. Our belief is that they're well over $4,000 in Newton. Not everyone chooses to register a dog, even though it is in fact the law. And then we issued 267 business certificates, the DBAs, which is a slight decrease from the previous year, but nothing particularly concerning. I can be quick here. We held 2 elections in Newton, a primary and a general last year. Congratulations to all of you. You clearly had a good day.
Voter got it right.
Voter got it right. And so, and yes, wait. On election day last year, we had the second highest number of registered voters in Newton ever. It's just shy of 61,000, which is about 1,000 fewer registered voters than we had on election day, of federal and state election in 2024. We expect by election day this year, unless something really changes in the world, that we will exceed the 2024 number. It will probably be closer to 63, 64, 65. It's a little hard to predict, but people, based on the registrations that we have in right now and what we expect the deluge over the summer, community is somewhat based on our census returns. The community is a little bit transient, but people tend to come here to register to vote. We have some of the highest voter participation rates in the state.
So this is the number of people who were registered as of election day, not the number of people who voted?
The total number of people who voted in November 25 was 23,000 who cast a ballot that day or early or by mail was 23,100 plus minus out of about 60,000 registered voters. For a local turnout rate of just about 38%. So for a local election, that's very high. An interesting statistic for that, for those of you who don't know, is that the item on the ballot where the most people cast ballots was the winter parking ban. More people cast ballots for that than they actually cast a ballot one way or the other for mayor.
You know what's important.
Goals and strategies. There's a longer version of goals and strategies and vision actually in the budget, but I've already talked about upgrading our training and our office-wide customer service training. We are obviously in response to commentary we got as a result of the election last year. We have a number of things that we want to address to upgrade our setups and polling locations. We're really trying to find more ways to engage up front and recruit election volunteers. And, one of the complaints we got was that our poll worker training, while probably about the right length this year, we didn't focus on the things that they thought were most needed to be able to function on that day. So we're going to rework that. And obviously, voters are very engaged this year. We're always looking for ways to better engage voters. League of Women Voters, it's a TV show that produced periodically. I'm appearing on it at some point. Talk about all of our registration deadlines, early absentee vote by mail applications, and I'm simply going to hammer all, request them early, return them early, preferably take them to the post office so they get a postmark on them. They're fairly close. The U.S. Postal Service has not assured anybody that they were actually postmarked ballots that just put the mail that day, so it can create problems. So everybody gets them back quickly. We had during the election last year, we did have some problems with vote by people requesting vote by mail ballots, absentee ballot. We don't get that many overseas ballots for service people and others, but some of those came back very late, which is disturbing in the case of the overseas voters because we can email the ballot back into the unique category of voters. They don't have a copy. Yeah, but we had trouble getting returns in a couple of places. We've heard from a number of people, so we're going to try and feature that more prominently on the website. There are not a lot of people who qualify for those that do. It's critical and it's actually relevant. They can mail it back, but so that's probably not the best way to do it. There is an email option, which is a very, very unique category of voter. Technology, we talked about the docket tracker. That procurement has been done. It is the paperwork has been signed. I got an email from the person who's going to be our customer liaison earlier in the week. We're going to meet, I believe, a week from Monday for a kickoff meeting just with my team and IT. I'll quickly expand as we work out training modules and other things. To all of you, there'll be an online training for people who are used to the old docket tracker in the public. We're going to get all of that up and running this summer. By the time you all return in earnest in September, we're going to be that system's going to be up and running. And I think all of you are going to appreciate the difference in the improvements. And frankly, it's going to make our time more efficient as well. It's going to be easier for us to do the things we do now, but also do things that we really can't do. It's going to be far more searchable, so that should keep everybody's sanity on an even keel.
Question on that. Will the information in the current docket tracking system, the history, somehow carry
All
over?
going to work.
And anything before that we didn't use the new system on that predated the old?
The predates that our goal is to get all of that up in a searchable format. That would probably lag a little bit.
That would be awesome, kind of like all the special permit. Right?
Absolutely. And actually, we'll start with a special permit.
Is it going to be searchable for voting records? Because a lot of people were interested in voting records.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Searchable by voting records. That was actually, I mean, there were two main products here, but and the one that won, that was a requirement for both of them laid out, and so both of them are actually very good at that.
What system are?
You're going with Civic Plus, which is also the backbone of the city's new website. So part of the IT's interest in this particular product is, well, they can put anything on any platform. This will be a little more seamless, and it also made pretty significant discounts available to us in both in the procurement and operating costs.
And Civic Plus is going to be our new website, but it's not our current website, or is it our current website?
Website or service?
Civic Plus,
Civic.
the service or the system.
The vendor. I think plus is the vendor, right?
Right. I don't know if they're the current backbone of this. I'm happy to send them to Greg in the morning.
I should know. There was a switch about 5 years ago. That was not great.
Yeah, well, the switch now, I think we'll have a cleaner meter and more visually appealing website when both that implementation is done. And frankly, all of us are working pretty hard to update our content, get rid of content that doesn't seem useful. I've got, I think it's important information. I've got some pages on my website. Get visited 3 times a year. I think it's useful information. So maybe positioning it may just be something. We talked about being near the end of the staffing overhaul. I don't need to discuss that anymore. I think when you all interviewed me, I told you I was a big fan of standard operating procedures. I want to test their best practice. I have them, but I hope to find them to be a very useful training tool. I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on getting this done in the coming year. We've been a little bit out of the water, so we're not as far along as we'd like. I'd like to get written SRPs in place, and then I'd like to help bring in an intern or somebody else who's tech savvy to create little videos to take people through every step of it, and there'll probably be some spin-off benefits to that as well. I believe that's my last one. I apologize. I think I spoke a little longer than I planned.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions. I want to ask one question, if I could. In terms of the budget, the legal level of control, I noticed that the elections department personnel services sort of has fluctuated. I think that is due to clerks leaving, and a huge salary for the higher salary, I should say, of the clerk being vacant for a little while. But I'm curious why the recommended 27 budget is almost $80,000 lower than the current year budget in terms of.
Right.
I think you wanted to talk about that.
No, that is the by consolidating the election supervisor into the deputy position. That salary number and fringe benefit came out of that line, and it's partially accommodated elsewhere. Probably in my line item, as I recall, the overall clerk line. But no, that
So it's not going to reorganize.
It's part of the reorganization. But a lot of it's absorbed elsewhere, some of it is simply absorbed project.
Council Bixby.
So my, bunch of my questions are gonna be about this elections area, because I noted too, the big differences. What are the other cost drivers? And I know what you're saying about this year being slightly lower than FY '24, the original for FY '26, but do you have a sense of where we are for '26? And sorry, this is and what the drivers, I mean, I have some suspicions about the drivers of each of these different years, why they're so different, but.
Yeah, some specific line items.
So the total elections in '23 went from 200,000 to nearly 700 in '24, back down to 225. The original '26 was back up to 500.
I'm
At the bottom of page one.
Like at the very first summary
The
page.
total election.
total elections.
Yeah.
There is some fluctuation, and obviously we've had some turnover in that department. I honestly do not know why the actual in FY '25 was that low, or the actual '23, because there's the difference between a local election and state federal is doesn't drive a number exactly like that. If a school committee member were to design a special election for that would cost, we still have to open a lot of polling places. So let me get back to you on that, because I actually hadn't noticed going back to 2025. So let me chase that around.
Yeah, I mean, only if it's useful for your, it seems to.
But I think that was when our last full-time clerk left.
Oh, also.
And so we had an interim clerk for a while.
Right. In '24, there was a presidential primary, an override.
Right. I assume that that's part of it. The elections portion of the budget actually gets probably just a lot more of the lines in my budget get adjusted less frequently. For example, last year, when it became apparent that we weren't going to have a special election in the spring this year, the mayor's office pulled that money back with the purpose of promise that if something bad happened, we could cut that. So there may be some of that. Like, let me have a conversation with Maureen, who's the on the budget, the institutional.
And then I guess, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying about combining that position and kind of having you and this other individual kind of focus on certain areas of the office. I know many other municipalities have elections in their own department, which I think is maybe one of the drivers of challenges. So I guess I would just say keep us posted on how it's all going, because it seems super, like you're saying, it's an incredibly hard job right now, and it's a really important job. So if there is, we can all support that anyway.
Well, I've got 7 very promising candidates for that position. All of them have extensive election experience. My recollection is 4 of them have extensive experience here in Massachusetts, and I have candidates, maybe 5. Those differences can be treated at the they all do this requirement of the job description. I take it very seriously, because if I'm going to certainly first most on that, I want to make sure that it really makes sense.
And do you feel like with these changes and the hiring that's underway that you and your office has what it needs to do everything you want and expect to need on elections?
Yes, I think so. Part of what some of you may not know, the way we're organized on that elections side of the house, where anybody who's not a committee clerk or the archivist, they're all cross-trained on one another's jobs. So, for example, the beginning of the year when the census comes out, which we're going to send out earlier next year, because we had some overlap with dog licenses, it wasn't helpful. when those start to come back, everybody who's got a little bit of available time, they're all trained. Single dog licenses, which they're not that long. It doesn't seem like a big number. Processing them, particularly in the first year, processing that way is proven difficult. People have not loved having to create a new account for it. You have to upload, if you're going to do it online, you have to upload a valid previous certificate. So then the chip that we send out has to be manually processed. So everybody pitches in on that, and we're more or less through signature deadline. I think most of the deadlines now ask for candidates to get us signatures. We have as long as 2 weeks to finish those up. We're basically, and then we're into huge voter registration. So that's a long answer to a relatively short question. Which is yes, I think we're in pretty good shape. In the just over 6 months I've been here, we've been fully staffed for 3 days. So being fully staffed, I think it's going to feel like maybe not a vacation. It'll feel pretty solid. I think we're in a good place, but I will keep you posted if that doesn't turn out to be the case.
Councilor Sharp?
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome. And to you, yes. As we think about elections, I think one of the things that is top of mind is election security and some of the new threats and dynamics that are in place. I don't see any major changes here in terms of how it sounds like we're going to be approaching things or some of the expenses. I'm wondering if you can just speak to, from your experience or from talking with other clerks, like what do you think we need to be prepared for, and where might that potentially need to show up in the budget, and is it?
Right. We have a lot of confidence in our machines for calculators. I don't think there's a huge election security related issue there. I think our bigger concern is people who are hostile to polls, challenge voters, and other things. At least most years, a resolution comes to the council about deploying police officers at all the polling stations. We have a lot of volunteers. We have a lot of very senior poll workers who are capable of using things. We can be deployed. People on my staff can deploy very quickly. The state has not identified a lot of specific threats yet. They haven't identified any electronic issues that they think we're going through. So for the moment, I actually feel like we're in good shape there. The challenge is to balance another thing. It doesn't so much as it does in other places. But if we start to hear rumblings or chatter, we'll come talk to you about it. And ultimately, I think we are in good shape on all that. But it is an evolving situation. People are very angry. May actually, I guess is under people spend a couple of hours thinking on that. Another out there making a lot of people out there. So the world justice.
Great. Yeah, just appreciate you keeping your eyes open.
Yeah, that is something that keeps awake at night, just because some of that will be very.
Councilor Malky?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, well, staying on the topic of elections briefly, I noticed there's something called elections furniture that we didn't used to have much of, and last year we had 10,000, and this year we're budgeting 10,000. What is that? Is that something that we think, or is it?
It is sort of as needed. We replace the actual booths with some frequency. That is not the number for the
right. Obviously not.
We do those periodically.
That was a big, huge lump. Yeah.
Those are relative. All of that equipment is relatively new, so we won't be coming back to you for anything on that.
So that's not an ongoing every year.
We budget it when we know we need to replace.
Okay. So they were just the wooden sort of frame things.
I think years also come through that. And some of those we have to budget for that every couple of years. Those tend to go nesting in time.
Yeah. Okay. That answer. and on the census mailing, so basically the motivation to get it earlier is to not overlap with the dog license
Yeah, my,
period. Because this is like going back, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. I always felt like I got my census form in week 1 in January, or like very early.
it's slipped a little later than usual this year.
Uh-huh.
We had a problem
It did
with the
seem-
vendor. So it definitely went out a couple weeks later than the previous mailing. I've already told the census bid and some of the, I think elections are like that out no later or January next year. The deadline is still June 1, but we do continue to communicate in different ways. The first is the postcard reminding you to get it back, and then
Yeah.
after June, before some of the registration deadlines, all of the people who have not returned it, who are registered voters, they need to show under state law, they need to show valid ID votes.
Okay.
I think it's a strange requirement by the state, but they get contacted about that. What I will say is that the response rate to the census is significantly higher for registered voters than it is for non-registered voters. In a given year, we usually get 75% of the census forms back for a voter and a voter's family by household. The response rate for non-registered voters is in the high 60s actually. So so there's an incentive to do it if you're a registered voter that doesn't exist for the other, but it's a requirement. So we promote it early, often early in the year. We remind people the deadline's coming up. We explain on our website and in our newsletter. The mayor is kind enough to carry this newsletter that if you're planning to vote, you don't want to bring it. Do it year round, but you do bump up against voter registration. That once you're unenrolled in that way, all you have to do is show an ID. But during election time, you can't cure it and fix it after.
So if we're having like an early in the calendar year special election or override election or whatever,
Or
advantageous to get the maximum number of people than on the census response.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Just a technical request. The people who speak on Drew's side of the table, I think we're having a little more difficulty hearing them than on the other side of the table. I don't know where your microphone is, but if there's a way you can spread it around, it'll just be a little easier on us remotely. Thank you.
We noted. Thank you.
Councilor, I'm also happy to speak up a little bit too.
Councilor Malik?
That may help as well, but thank you.
Yeah, I think,
You all set?
I had one question that kind of covers all our departments, and it's maybe a Maureen with you question. I noticed that
She's not here.
in the, I don't know if you know why or somebody else will, in every department's line for OPEB contribution, it's 0 for the 2027 budget. And like in last year's budget, it wasn't 0 for the 2026 budget. So it seems like some procedure changed with OPEB.
I got Morse has a.
Mr. Morris.
Yes, this is actually a simple answer. In years past, the OPEB has been kind of sprinkled throughout every budget in every department, and this year it is in a single line, consolidated to simplify things.
Where's that found, Mr. Morris?
Give me a few minutes. I'll look at the budget and I will find the page for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Matt. You all set?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. I see no other hands. Councilor Baker.
Just the question of recodification and
Recodification is on my list of priorities. That project stalled out a little bit when my deputy left. She had taken that on last year. I'm going to take it on myself at the time being. We are not as far along as we need to be on it.
I understand that, but I'm a little concerned that you try and carry that baggage if we can get some help from somebody with you. And the law department is sitting here. I'm looking over there.
The law department has not volunteered for this particular task.
I understand. That's why I'm asking now.
They're up next.
That's them, and then when they get up here, because this is part of the important responsibility of the city to make sure that the ordinances are updated and they're legally effective. So, anyway,
Frankly, and you're exactly right. The sooner we're done processing, the quicker that the vendor who's going to support that can take it over and keep it updated.
and the other question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is Mr. Rice is here, and I know we're trying to provide alternative opportunities and cultural enrichment. But the city council chamber has been in use a lot for various ceremonial events. And I guess the question is, how is that decided? And because obviously the War Memorial is an alternative, but it sometimes feels a little awkward when you come in, try and do a little work at your chair, at your desk, and somebody's holding an event. And no, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do that, but I just would like to know how that decision is made.
In theory, not necessarily in practice, those requests come through our office. I will not say it's universally, of course. If it is concerned you, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about.
No, I just think it's generally, I see a few heads nodding around the table, so I think people are just,
maybe we need a standard operating procedure.
Yeah, maybe that's right. Or an unstandard operating procedure.
I'm happy to write that. I will tell you that some of the comings and goings of the chamber have been reduced relatively dramatically. So we've sort of gotten a handle on the city's wedding policy. We only do that on Wednesday afternoon. They come around long before during the evening meeting. Make sure the chamber.
Do we welcome the contribution to the city for that opportunity, or is that not appropriate?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking, do we get a revenue?
The city gets revenue for the marriage intention forms.
Yeah, but not for the ceremony. Yes. Interesting opportunity. I guess the reason I'm a little cautious about that.
If they're getting married, we're not taxing enough. We want to.
We need to do that. No, I just I guess I'm being a little bit concerned about the chamber is designed to be the city council chamber. We have the War Memorial as an alternative space, and it's often used for a variety of cultural events. And I guess I would like to have some sense that scheduling is run through your office as the clerk of the council, and you make judgments about when it's appropriate. I mean, you were former Sergeant at Arms for the Senate, and I dare say I doubt seriously there were weddings that were conducted in the Senate chamber. Maybe they were.
I think that's a very safe bet.
So, not that they were on the same scale as the Senate, but it is the legislative arm of the city, and I think that
your point's well taken. Let's, if you don't mind, let's have a.
No, we can talk offline about that.
I mean, I'd welcome that because obviously my office is downstairs and there are events going on up there that I'm not aware of. My office honestly hasn't scheduled a lot of events in there. But let's have a conversation about what you see, and we'll see if we can figure something out.
So, the mayor's representatives are here, and they may see more than we do. So anyway, everybody on the same page is a good idea. That's all. Okay, thanks. That's it.
All right, I see no other questions.
Quick question there.
Councilor Barrow.
Thank you. Are all polling locations in public buildings, or most of them?
No. I don't know that I can say 100% of them are. There's at least one that is in a retirement community, which I don't consider a public building. But maybe a couple of others. The vast majority in public buildings.
Thank you.
Morse.
So the OPEB contributions were consolidated into the comptroller's budget, $4 million this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this would be an appropriate time for someone to motion for a straw vote approval of the $2,704,972 budget. City clerk's office, as well as CIP and CIP.
The move.
Councilor Farrell's moved approval by a straw vote. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's 0. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Chairman, that's one comment. I just think
Councilor Baker.
I came in late and I didn't have the chance to say it at the outset of your presentation. I very much appreciated the fact that you're willing to move into a foreign jurisdiction and take over a role and drive so far to do it every day. And I think it's an important opportunity for the city. Thank you. And also all your miles that I've worked with and others as well.
Good. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the city solicitor, Ms. Giuliani. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Temple, welcome.
Talking in the legal business about having a second chair, I didn't realize that was your.
Literal. I carried it with me.
Thank you, Chair Krinsman, members of the committee. Jonah and I are here to present the budget for the city solicitor's office. We do not have a prepared PowerPoint presentation. We'll run through some highlights very quickly and then leave as much time as possible for any questions that you have. This year, our proposed budget for the department is about $2.3 million. It represents a 2% increase over last year's budget. The bulk, about a little over 83% of our budget is dedicated to salaries and benefits of the 14 FTEs in our office. The remaining 16 or so percent is for the expenses, and I'll go through some of that. As I said, we've got 14 FTEs in the office, and I believe the last two budgets that I have brought to this committee, I have sadly reported a vacancy that continued over a number of years for our senior labor attorney, and I am excited to report that we have filled that position with an experienced senior labor counsel. Her name is Alejandra Hung. We relieved the City of Boston Labor Relations Department of her services. But before that, she spent a dozen years or so at the NLRB. She comes to us with a wealth of experience, and she has jumped into the pool fast. And she is swimming very well in the deep end, working with our unions. And she's been doing a great job. So I'm very pleased to report that we are not sharing with you again that we are continuing a vacancy in that position. Also in the category of staffing in our budget, you will see a reimagining of one of our FTEs, and that is the position of ADA coordinator. Some of you may know that our ADA coordinator retired a few months ago, Julie Fairley, who I hope is enjoying a very well-deserved retirement. That certainly left a vacancy in that position. We have not only hires, but needs an ADA coordinator. And it gave us an opportunity to take a closer look at the position. Our Deputy City Solicitor, Jonah Temple, is functioning as our acting ADA coordinator. And while he is busy handling the work at hand, he's also sort of assessing how best to utilize and how effectively utilize that position. Our reimagination of that position includes, we're considering whether or not we can combine that position with another attorney, another assistant city solicitor. That's what we're proposing in our budget, and if you were to approve it, we'd be looking for someone at some point after July. What that position looks like and its specific duties, we're still sort of working on as we assess what we're doing. From a litigation perspective, we continue to handle an array of matters. Sort of the heavy areas of case law include discrimination cases, employment cases, of course, our labor work, land use work, which is very robust in our office, personal injury or tort type cases, and then our enforcement matters. We certainly spend a lot of our time doing other things as well, but that seems to be sort of the highlight. And then this past year, we added to that array of work representation of the city before the Appellate Tax Board for tax and utility billing appeals. that was previously handled through the assessor's office by outside counsel. And in working with Jim Shaughnessy, we figured out a way for the law department to take on that work. And so far, so good. It's all moving very smoothly. And then last but certainly not least is the work that we do in support of the city council, rendering legal opinions, helping to draft and amend ordinances, and advising the council on various committees on legislative initiatives that impact the community. I want to turn my attention to our expenses and just highlight for you a few things in the budget this year. I'll highlight our top 3 money items. Our expenses are total about $386,000. And one of our biggest line items is for settlements. We have $100,000 budgeted, and that generally covers settlements for claims. Our office handles claims filed by residents and visitors of the city. And sort of the top categories of claims that we generally handle are street defects and potholes, and damages that folks may experience. Motor vehicle accidents, so that's damages caused to others by our motor vehicles in the course of city work. Snowplow claims, likewise damages caused as a result of snow plowing activities. And then tree claims, again, damage caused by fallen trees for which the city is liable. And so it's from that bucket of money that we generally pull to settle those cases. Some of which are small, just a couple $100. Some that may be, anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 or so. The second large bucket is our legal services line item. And I believe there is $100,000 in that particular line item. That is the bucket from which we draw money for outside counsel. So under the city ordinances, the Office of the City Solicitor is responsible for representing and advising the city. But we are also responsible for securing the advice and services of additional counsel in special cases. And special cases is what is used in the ordinance. Special cases are those cases that require a specific area of expertise. And the best examples I can give to you for those types of cases are eminent domain cases. Webster Woods is a prime example of that. Bankruptcy cases. Turtle Lane is a great example of that, where there are bankruptcy proceedings going on and the expertise of a bankruptcy attorney has been necessary. And then another special type case would be a wrongful death case. I am happy that the city of Newton does not have too many, but we are still litigating the matter of the police-involved shooting on Lincoln Street. And we do have specialized counsel handling. And then the third largest item of expenses in our budget is a line item that says books, manuals, and periodicals, which is not exactly, it's an old-time description for money that we use for our legal research software. It's also the line item that we use for our books and periodicals for legal research. But as you can imagine, we've moved away from books and periodicals and more to online research and resources. It's also the budget item from which we draw money for our professional development for our attorneys and members of our office. You will notice that in that line item, we have increased, the line item is $70,000. That is up from $40,000 of last year. The reason for that is we had really taken a look at our legal resources and made a number of efforts to try to enhance the type of resources that we have. So the legal research software that we use is Westlaw. And we have enhanced the services that we utilize to now include AI capabilities, which are specifically designed for legal research and assisting lawyers in litigation. It's very robust, it's very interesting, and I think it will really make a positive impact on the work that we do in our office. We have also added within this budget line item we'd like to add an electronic discovery tool to help manage litigation documents in complex cases. We do have a number of complex cases where, kind of like you see on TV, we get boxes and boxes of documents that we need to go through. And this particular tool is going to help us to reduce the amount of man hours that we have going through page by page, and really help us to cull through those documents so we can get to what we're looking at for our litigation. So that's the reason for the major increase, but I think it's going to have a really positive impact on the work that the attorneys in the office can do.
I'll also just add for that piece for the e-discovery, it's also going to be used for public records. So we sometimes get very, very large public records requests that takes 30, 40 hours to review, and we charge for it. But using that e-discovery software to review and redact public records is going to be a big piece of that.
So those are the highlights. And Jonah and I are here and happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of that or anything else.
Council Baker.
Well, recodification.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had many conversations about it. We were working closely with Cassidy on that process. It was time intensive because of how far things had gotten behind on updating the ordinances online. And that's really the first step. We need to know what all of the ordinance amendments are and get them updated. Cassidy had compiled the list and was systematically going through it. I don't think she had completed that. So I know Drew plans to take that on. We've had some initial discussions over the last couple of months. It is a priority. It also is less of a priority than certain other things, such as elections. So it does get bumped a little bit, but it is something me and him have talked about in the last couple of weeks, and it is going to move towards the top of the list.
Well, let me amplify the comment slightly, because in prior versions of this, for instance, your predecessor, Rita Young, worked with the Recon Committee in the past, and even further back, the then Deputy City Solicitor Gail Smalley was hired basically back by the clerk's office as a consultant to help us with that. And the administration is here, but this is one of those things that the clerk has got a lot of things on his plate to manage something of that detail and complexity. You all also, and I wonder whether this is one of those places where your consulting line item could benefit by bringing back somebody who knows, who's been with the city and knows the city ordinances, not educating anybody from scratch, but whose extra pair of hands at this time would make a difference and save time and money in the long run.
Yeah, it's a very valid comment, and we've been having that conversation with the city clerk as well, and it's something we're considering and thinking through. I think he's focused on getting fully staffed up and then making the assessment.
Right, but there may be, between your two departments, knowing what you all already have to deal with, there may be a value added of having an additional player in the game who's not full-time but is available for short-term commitment to try and get this done. And I would just encourage everybody who's involved in that to consider that option. And the other piece is the whole artificial intelligence. We, as you know, perhaps from the city solicitor is a graduate of the school, which I teach, and we've been spending a lot of time and energy in my institution thinking a lot about this question, and whether there is, again, even though I'm quite confident that the Westlaw people do a good job, there are other engines that are useful and have been developed, and it might be beneficial to, again, think about reaching back to some of the bibliographic services that are available. As an alumna, you get to go to Suffolk Law School and talk to anybody anytime you want to. So I think the point I'm getting at is there may be resources outside the department that can then leverage your time. And I don't pretend to say what all of those are, but I know they're extensive.
Yeah, and I will say on that front that we did demo multiple AI products extensively. And did a fair amount of research, and we're very confident that Westlaw has kind of the strongest AI engine, and we're going through all of the trainings now and learning its capabilities, and we're really just kind of at the beginning stages of truly kind of unleashing what we think it can do for us.
And as you know, the ability to hallucinate is part of the difficulty. You don't want to be sanctioned for citing a case that doesn't exist. That's
We're well aware of the pitfalls some of our colleagues have fallen into. And as Jonah said, we're just in the initial stages. I think this is a beneficial tool, but we're all approaching this very cautiously. We want to make sure that our work is authentic and primary. But some of what we've seen is pretty impressive in terms of ways that it can help us get to information or buckets of information that we can pull from. And help us.
okay. Thank you.
Councilor Bixby. Councilor Bixby.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Chair. My questions, sorry, I'm in a really weird spot. I'm gonna come around a little bit. Hi. The ADA coordinator position. So can you talk a little bit more about what you're thinking there? And it sounds like it's still sort of preliminary. And I guess the context, I had mostly seen our previous ADA coordinator very involved in sort of certain projects that are well outside the maybe usual scope of the law department, and found that super useful, her involvement in those different things. And also wondering if you've had to talk to the Commission on Disability about this, and others, gotten their feedback on whatever changes we have.
Yeah, I mean, we are very early in the assessment stage. It's only been a couple months. I think it will probably be at least 6 months while I truly learn what's needed, both with all the departments in terms of what they relied on with Jeannie and what worked well and what didn't, and what they need moving forward. And then also with COD as well. And I'm working closely and talking with the co-chairs on a probably weekly, daily basis at this point.
Great. Okay, so similarly, I guess I'll say to the extent that, letting us know how it's going and or ways that we can be helpful on that one, because it's such an important role in so many ways in the community, but also makes sense to make sure it works the best way possible. I guess on the AI front, maybe this is also just a broader comment, but it does seem like as different departments are playing with this, we have a number of AI experts in the community as well. And it just will be an interesting broader conversation about how much the community is comfortable with these different pieces and knowing what AI is doing on the government, and all of us get comfortable with it and everything. So there's probably some bigger conversations to be had. It's interesting that you all are maybe one of the departments that's delving into it a little bit more sooner than others, perhaps.
Yeah, I think we are, we're not working on this just in our office. We're working with the IT department and working with the administration on best practices and how we want to approach this. From our perspective, the resources that we're looking to use now are really more research tools. We've not delved into any of our work done AI, so to speak. What we're looking at are predominantly research tools that will really help us to get to information faster than we could have with ordinary search engines or reading things. That's not to say, we've been through a number of trainings, and there are certain areas where we can identify that the old way we did it is probably going to work better. But yeah, we are doing this predominantly from a research perspective for our office, but we're not doing it in the back. We're making sure that we're working with the city, because we want to make sure that the best practices the city expects, you expect, and we expect in our community are adhered to.
Thanks.
Councilor Trump.
I am connecting a couple dots between this conversation and what you were saying about some of the outside counsel that you sometimes pull in with things like bankruptcy. with a conversation that we had a few days ago with the Treasury Department, where they were talking about the liens they put on properties. And we learned that there are 76 or 77 parcels in the city that have an outstanding balance, and a number of them are quite large balances that have been there for a long time. And I was surprised to hear that there was really only one foreclosure that people could think of in recent history. This seems to me like a blatant breaking of the law. Like, we have an obligation here that people need to be fulfilling. And it, in a crass way, seems like a revenue opportunity for the city. So I'm curious, like, what could we be doing to actually enforce that part of the law?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a conversation that we're actively having with the treasurer and with the administration. I think in past administrations, there was a policy not to foreclose on homes where they were occupied. The one foreclosure that we did was 91 Newtonville, that was an abandoned property. I think that is definitely something worth looking at. I will say we're not legally obligated to foreclose, because we always have to lien on the property, and we'll ultimately see our money one way or the other when a property is sold. But it is a good question, and it is also an area where we utilize outside counsel. That is a very specialized process to do the foreclosure. We use outside counsel to do that with 91 Newtonville, and it's a very small fee, and it essentially gets paid out of the proceeds. So we're having those conversations, and we've identified a bucket of properties that we may be turning over to outside counsel at some point.
I would encourage you. I'm glad to hear that you guys are having these conversations, because we are also getting complaints from neighbors of several of those properties. And I think that it's a concern of the city in a number of different ways. So I'm glad to hear that.
Council Farrell.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, sort of a little side, my favorite issue of 29 Greenwood and having fees that are assessed to owners of properties, and why there is no mechanism for us to hold those fees until there is a resolution of the case. As we both know, and others probably, the fees assessed to the owners of 29 Greenwood are excessive $300,000 a day. And it just always seems to me, why can't the city have an escrow account that sits there, and the defendant wins, they get that plus interest, and if the defendant loses, then it comes to the city. Where right now, if the defendant loses, it doesn't look to me like the city will recoup any of that fund. So and I don't think this is the only instance where this happens. We've had this discussion, but I just want to add on and I continue to wonder why we can't do something like that.
Do you want me to answer? Sure. Yeah, so basically the way it works is, and we can use 29 Greenwood as an example, when somebody violates a city ordinance, we issue a violation notice that has a fine with it. Sometimes it's $300 a day. It's the building code. It could be $1,000 a day. We cannot force someone to actually hand that money over to the city. The only way for us to collect the fine is through filing a criminal complaint in the district court, which we do not infrequently to collect fines. But that is our only way to force somebody to actually pay us when we fine them. Now, we have gone to the state. Right now, we have special legislation pending to be able to lien properties when they don't pay us the fine, because that is a much better tool, or an additional tool, instead of going into the district court. Right now, we can lien properties when they don't pay their property taxes, and whenever it gets sold, we'll get that money back. But right now, under state law, we don't have that ability for unpaid fines, but the state has granted that legislation recently to a couple other cities and towns, and we're following that and hoping to get that passed this legislative term at the state or next legislature.
That's encouraging. So this is with any fine, we have no way to enforce payment except taking it to court.
Correct.
Again.
We can't go into their bank account and take it from them.
Okay. Thank you. But I had a second question here, and it's much more mundane than all of this stuff, but when you talked about claims, you mentioned the word when a tree falls down. And we had an incident in my neighborhood where a tree fell down and knocked down the front lamp. And the city said that it isn't responsible for that.
Yes.
You don't need to give me a full explanation, but when you use the word trees, I immediately thought about this and I'm curious why.
Well, I'll just say generally with all of our claims, when they come out, simply because something happens in the city or you file a claim does not mean that the city is legally responsible for what happened or the damage resulting.
Okay.
So any claim that comes in, we have an assessment process. We investigate the matter and make a determination as to whether or not, under the law, the city is responsible or could be found responsible for the damage that resulted. So that may be, every case is different. And the fact that every case factor into whether or not it is a claim that we will deny, and we actually say what the reasons are, or that we will honor.
And I'll just add on that for tree claims. I mean, and for all these claims, it's a negligence standard. So what we're really looking at is whether or not the city acted reasonably, whether or not we had prior notice that there was a problem with the tree, and either we didn't act in response to that, or we didn't act reasonably. So oftentimes you have, I think, the second most number of street trees in the state. So there are oftentimes when a tree falls, we don't necessarily have notice that was going to happen. So we frequently deny tree.
And I'll just add to that the same standard would apply for potholes. Simply because there are potholes in the road doesn't mean that your city or the city of Newton is responsible for it. Again, there's an analysis as to whether or not the city knew or should have known about it and was negligent in handling it.
In my opinion, potholes are different. I think people should drive more slowly as they're going. But there is a difference of opinion about whether we knew that this particular tree was in bad shape. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You all set?
Thank you.
Councilor Malikan.
Thanks. Following up on Councilor Charm's question, I think if I remember correctly, the interest rate on unpaid back taxes used to be like pretty high, and we were actually knowing that we could confidently acquire the house if they never paid. We were kind of making good money on the interest, but I think that rate has been reduced a couple of years ago. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that.
I think that is correct. That's a wrong question, but I think it has been reduced recently.
Yeah, I guess this came up in finance and assessing a few years ago, and it seemed like the real estate in Newton goes up so fast that we never used to be too worried about getting our money eventually, but the open concern seemed to be that we didn't know who else they might owe, like income taxes to federal or state, which would have senior rights, and if like the same person who had that house in Louisville Ave owes a kind of money to the federal government or whatever, we would have been second or third and not necessarily have benefited from the proceeds of selling the property. Is that still an issue?
I mean, we're always going to be secondary to the federal government.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is kind of a reason to not let it go too long, I guess. And what else is going on in people's lives? I just had a couple of curious things I think I was curious about. The e-discovery, is that coming under the books, manuals, periodicals as well, or is that under dues and subscriptions? Because dues and subscriptions went up.
That's under books, manuals, and periodicals.
Yeah, and dues and subscriptions went up. It's not a huge amount of the greater scheme of things, but it did, go up quite a bit from last year.
So,
and past history.
Yep. So the dues and subscriptions line item covers our memberships in bar associations, our membership in the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association, our bar dues. And that did go up. We now have another attorney.
Okay, so
Yeah, and we also wanted to make sure that we were increasing our professional development, which isn't just going to webinars and conferences, but it's also participating in bar associations, affinity groups, and taking on leadership roles where we can in those areas. So where there's a cost associated with that, we wanted to be able to, and I know the mayor was emphasizing for us that it was important to make sure there was some money built in for us to be able to cover that.
And registration and recording fees, I don't know why, I don't remember asking about them when they went up last year, but they're down again. What's going on there?
Let's see.
I think that was an area that we identified that year over year, I think the cost was less than what we were budgeting.
Yeah, what is it? What are we recording? Is this?
We're recording documents having to do with affordable housing loans and with, anytime we dispose of property.
When we sell a city property, or is it also to do with like the SHI inventory documentation?
Yes, it's the some of the deed restrictions on those, and then also I don't know if we cover the recordings for the tax liens. That might be a separate line item.
Okay, thanks. And at some point, no rush, but I'd love to have the org chart with the names in it. I really like being able to connect names with positions, and I gotta say, HR did a phenomenal job on their org chart.
Do that for you. Get that to you. I would also like to.
That's good.
House Baker.
Just one thing I wanted this clarified. If we take tax title or otherwise take title to a property, the city has to dispose of it, right? We own it?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think the one risk of collecting is you still got to sell the building.
Yeah.
So the city's not necessarily the best at that.
And you actually raise a really good point, Councilor Baker, because before we embark on this step, if we do it with foreclosures, we're going to need to amend the reuse ordinance, because the new state foreclosure laws require us to make a decision on the disposition of it after we foreclose faster than what our ordinance allows for. So we need to make some changes to line that up.
That's fine. I just want to say I've appreciated the assistance from the law department for the committee I chair.
Thank you.
I don't see other comments. I just want to quickly add my gratitude to the law department. You guys are fantastic, certainly in helping us draft ordinances. You guys have been, including special permits. I know I got a lot of assistance, especially when it came to Riverside. Your office was fantastic, and in particular, Jonah and Allie, I know you guys worked really hard on Turtle Lane. So thank you guys for all the work you've done on that and continue to do on that. I think the law department is well worth it. I'm happy to move for a straw vote to approve $2,347,969, as well as the supplemental CIP and the CIP. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Very much. Next item is Health and Human Services. Wow. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
No problem. No problem. Yeah. Let's reopen the vote.
Yeah.
In favor of the vote? Great, thank you.
Good evening, Counselor. So when I keep it short and sweet.
What do you think?
I'll keep my part short and sweet.
Go for it.
Oh, it was you that had the great org chart. Not the chair, it was HHS. Had a great org chart.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Everybody in it.
I didn't list out all 31 nurses because that felt
Right.
a little overkill.
That would be crowded.
All right, well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here to present our proposed budget and plans for FY27. I want to take a moment and recognize the 50 amazing professionals I work with every day. Their commitment absolutely amazes me. And I just want to highlight a few of their accomplishments before I get into the budget. Again, I promise I'll be short. So we do have all the school nurses in the health department. They are the backbone of student health and well-being in our public schools. In the 2024-25 school year, they engaged with students 108,984 times for health room visits related to illness and injury, medication administration, and screening. The Human Services Division, they're a vital support system for our residents. They provide case management, resources, in addition to programming to ensure the well-being of Newton residents across the lifespan. In calendar year 2025, they supported more than 400 Newton households by connecting them to resources related to financial assistance, housing, fuel assistance, food access, clothing, mental health, transportation, employment, and many other basic needs. They also implemented a citywide food drive during the November 2025 government shutdown. You might remember they paused that Friday for a little bit there. And completed 19 Narcan trainings, providing over 300 Narcan kits to people who live and work in Newton, and provided a summer internship program for underserved youth ages 6 to 18, which we're going to continue this summer. The Public Health Division is perhaps the one you guys are most familiar with. They provide essential environmental, clinical, and community health services. They've been very busy over the last year. And this is all calendar year 2025 data. Over 1,000 inspections for everything from restaurants to housing, case investigations and contact tracing for 162 cases of reportable communicable diseases, administering over 1,000 doses of flu, COVID, and childhood vaccines, and conducting numerous health education outreach programs. And finally, the wheels that keep office running, the Administrative Services Division, they make sure we run smoothly, and they also manage all the permits and licenses. So among other types, I won't bore you with the full list unless you want it. Again, in calendar year 2025, just a few highlights: almost 500 food permits of different types, 54 pool permits, 122 alcohol permits for restaurant and packaged goods stores, and 35 permits for tobacco retailers. So a couple of FY27 goals I want to highlight that I'm particularly excited about. This first goal we've already started working with Cheryl and Lauren in economic development, as well as all the other departments that are involved in permits and licensing. But we're going to continue the work to create some additional resources and educational materials for to guide applicants through the very convoluted permitting process. We do understand that both the permitting process itself and the regulations they have to follow are confusing. And we can't change the regulations, but we can at least try to make the process a little bit more friendly to the and understandable. And we'll also continue to tweak workflows in NewGov to make it the best streamlined as possible. Another goal that I'm really excited about is that we'll be implementing new case management software for our human services resource navigators. This will improve workflows for the resource navigators and improve our ability to collect data and make referrals and better understand the needs of our residents. So this budget, despite what it says on the first page, it is actually an increase. There was a typo in the 2026 budget. I wish I had that much money, but I don't. So it is actually a 2.3% increase. And I think that positions us well to achieve all the goals we've laid out for FY27. Like most departments, the majority of our budget goes towards staffing. And so most of the line items where you see increases are related to increases in salary and benefit costs. Some other general expense lines that have increases are the case management software I just mentioned, some additional electronic health record licenses for the school nurses, additional funding for substitute school nurses, printing of the youth mental health resource cards that we hand out to students, and increases in the cost for contracted services such as mosquito surveillance control and mental health. So I'm excited to continue the great work that we do, evidence-based health protection and promotion programs, code enforcement, case management, and looking for opportunities to grow and improve a better system. Happy to take any questions. Short and sweet as promised.
Thank you very much. Questions? If there are no questions,
I have not paid attention apparently. Why is this whole school nursing under your budget?
Sure. So school nursing, the history of school nursing in the US actually started out of a public health department in New York. So I can't remember if it was late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a recognition that there was opportunities to improve not just student health, but ability to learn, focus, and succeed in school if there was some healthcare in the school setting. And so this is a model that we're very proud of to have in our department. It's a great model that does exist in some other Massachusetts communities, and our nurses love it. have that sort of medical model and the focus on the expertise obviously is very important, but I think our being able to focus on sort of on healthcare in that educational setting brings a particular lens. And we saw the benefit of this during COVID when the nurses were connected to the health department and could really focus on infection prevention. And control.
What I've been famous, I guess, but
Oh,
all of that can go on with your supervision.
sorry, say that again.
I'm just curious why this number.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of people who don't know there's another $3,700,000 of school services that the city provides for their taxes. And it's just why that is in your department, not under your supervision, but why in your department and not reflected in the school's budget.
Since they work for us, I think that's why they're in our budget. I don't know the full history of how it happened.
But they work for you and assign specifically to the schools.
That's correct.
Okay. It works, obviously. But I'm just curious when I think of that as fairly substantial service that is one of the costs of having a school system. And important. Yeah, I'm not denigrating the service. It's just how people get to see what's happening in the schools. Thank you.
Councilor Malky.
Yeah, so the, under, the HCA awareness, that's the host community agreement money that we used to have, and that's not coming back, right?
I don't believe so. I've lost a little bit of track of sort of the legislation that happened around that, but I don't believe.
Yeah, the last time we had it in the budget was 2024, so I guess it's going to sort of drop off in 2 years from that.
I think the SJC actually ruled they couldn't bring in
so
revenue from those community groups. I could be wrong about that.
Not only that, originally when it was passed, you had to be able to document that you were doing stuff that.
Oh, how you were spending it? Yeah.
That it was caused by.
It was reasonably related with the legal standard.
And yeah, if you're right, they got rid of.
They changed the law.
Yeah, so I guess it used to be used for counseling, emergency counseling, NPS services, and medical services. So the work that we were doing with that, has that been picked up somewhere else, like under mental health services, or did we just drop some of the things that we had been doing?
Maureen is better positioned to answer that all the questions, because some of the money was went to NPS services, for example, that we didn't. So I know it's in our budget, but I didn't. Well, my predecessor really, because this was gone, as you know, before I started, didn't oversee all of it. Some of it, I can tell you, got moved over to opioid funds. So, for example, one of we paid Riverside a grant to provide a school-based emergency services. I'm forgetting how it's called, emergency services responder. And so this person is part of their mobile crisis intervention team. Yeah. And so if a student is having a behavioral crisis in school, they can call, have this person come assess, potentially connect them to treatment depending on what's going on, both into the sort of short term as well as the long term. That's not paid for by opioid funds. And there's a couple other things that got moved over. I can't speak to the what happened to the positions that were in NPS, but we can find out.
Yeah, and I was also wondering, and I think maybe it was in your answer, the mental health services, that's counseling services, counseling youth, I guess outpatient, and counseling outpatient. So those, is that what you just said about paying Riverside to?
That's separate. So that's out of the opioid services. So the first one, counseling services, pays for a combination of a small grant to vary price, developmental health services, and then Interface. I don't know if you're familiar with Interface Referral Service out of William James College. They do a great, it's staffed by trained clinicians, and you can, the healthcare system in general is hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And then mental health care can be hard to find. And so what you do is you can call up and say, for free, and say, hi, I'm, this age, and, and I have this kind of, I'm struggling with anxiety or depression or whatever it may be. I'm looking for someone who takes Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, speaks Spanish, and is able to meet in person on evenings. Can you help connect me to a couple therapists? And they will, go through their database and say, here's 3 people that might work that based on those criteria, and get you connected. The other two they are Riverside, but it's not the specific service I was speaking about. One of them, the Counseling Youth Outreach, is there are counselors that will out of Riverside that will come meet students in schools, so that parents don't have to worry about scheduling appointments and all that sort of thing. And then the counseling outpatient is funding the Riverside Outpatient Center, not fully, obviously, but providing some funding there. So they're all sort of related parts of Riverside's community-based services, but different funding streams and different services.
Okay. So if somebody comes to Health and Human Services looking for help, you can refer them to them to get them to the right place. Okay. And let's see. I actually love this thing that the second language site had. I'm curious what languages you got in the two positions that are.
Both of those are Spanish, although one individual speaks Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, but unfortunately the way it's set up, they only get stipended.
Yeah, it's very good. We're getting
absolutely.
And is the pest control service amount enough?
So that might not be what you think it is. That's actually for the East Middlesex mosquito control district.
Oh, it's nothing to do with the rats.
No, it is not. I do not have a rat line. I don't. Yeah, so that's the surveillance for things like West Nile, Triple E, and then the spraying the water basins, things like that. Larvicide.
Oh, right. The catching.
Okay, great. All right, that makes sense.
Thanks.
All right, Councilor Block.
Thank you, Chair. The opportunity to participate. In last year's budget, the Public Health Division had a little more detail than what's included in this budget. I'm guessing not much has changed. The first item from last year was just stating that the Public Health Division had conducted over 1,000 inspections during the year of various types. And I'm sorry, I think I got a little interrupted. Anyway, I was wondering if you had similar data for 2025 in terms of the inspections your staff made and what the results were from those inspections.
I think the number of inspections is about the same in terms of over 1,000. It's hard to speak to result because there's so many different types of inspections and different reasons we're inspecting. Is there something specific that you're looking for?
No, I was just generally trying to get a handle on just the quantity of work that you're doing, how that's distributed among the staff. I'm guessing that these sorts of things were done by the environmental health specialist staff. Is that right?
The inspections, the vast majority are. The public health nurse does a handful of camp inspections, and then we have both some internal staff, and we're part of a shared services arrangement that does some of the tobacco inspections. But I'd say about 98% of the inspections are the environmental health staff. I could go into much more detail, but I think we're looking at things. Most of our inspections, there's a combination of routine inspections, like restaurants who get between 1 and 4 inspections a year, just to ensure that they're staying up to code in terms of food safety. And then there's complaint-based inspections. Housing is a good example of that, as are rats and other nuisance complaints, where we get a resident saying that something's not up to code, right? Their living conditions, there's rats, whatever it may be. Our inspectors go out, and then depending on what they find, either sometimes there's a finding that there's no violation, or sometimes there's a finding that there is, and then we take enforcement measures, and those depend on what's exactly going on.
So does everyone have a schedule and sort of a caseload that they're carrying of restaurants that they're inspecting, or is it just complaint driven? Just how does that work on it?
So for it's the inspections that are routine. So that will be things that basically are tied to permits. So things like restaurants, pools, body art, tobacco, those types of things that are tied to a permit and therefore need at least 1 inspection a year, if not more, are divided. And those are, we divide the city into 4 sections geographically. And then each inspector has a section, and the food, the restaurants, pools, et cetera, in their section are assigned to them. Complaints that come in, we try to rotate and sort of balance the workload evenly among inspectors.
Okay. So in terms of just say a generic budget question, do you feel you have enough staff? Do you to do the work that you have to do? Do you have sort of waiting lists of things to get to, or is your staff all on top of things? Just how do you gauge that? How do you measure that?
We measure it by a couple different ways. It's sort of looking at for the routine inspections whether they're getting done in the right amount of time. For example, with a restaurant that gets inspected 4 times a year, those inspections should be happening approximately every 3 months. And if it's if in a restaurant that's supposed to be inspected 4 times a year, we've only been out once or twice that year, then that's an indication to us that there's a problem. And sort of just in response time to requests for inspection, that sort of thing. That's sort of how we look at the work. I mean, I think, we can always use more staff to complete additional inspections and, really be able to follow up on everything the way we'd like. But I think the current staffing level is a reasonable amount, and we're able to accomplish a lot with it.
Okay. Thanks very much. That's it.
All right, seeing no Councilor.
Just out of school, doesn't it? The school nurses, do they follow the same schedule as teachers, or are they there all summer?
The management, so the director and assistant director mostly follow it, and then they work a few days, 15 days over the summer to sort of open the school year, close the school year, do any hiring, interviewing, that sort of thing. The rank and file school nurses do work the same schedule as the teachers. I think it's ever so slightly different. There are 181 days plus a couple days of prep and that sort of thing. In the summer, they are not contracted to work, but if they choose to, they can be hired by the school to work staff the extended school year programs, because those are required to have nursing staff.
Would then it be available to you for other projects that you might have?
If I had the funding, I don't think I have anything that we are looking for them to do, but if we did and I had the funding, they could choose to work for us, but it would be separate. Their contract is only for the 181 days.
And that's the majority of personnel that fall in.
That's the 3-1 school nurses.
Okay, thank you.
That's a firm.
We were very accurate.
I didn't know it, but now I'm becoming aware.
I'm also really interested in this blend here of the school nurses, and then we are providing mental health services, but most of them aren't in schools. I'm curious. So as I'm sure you know, one of the roles that was cut this year from the school budget was for a mental health oversight role for middle schools and high schools. And that has been a real concern of many parents and students, given some of the really alarming mental health statistics that we have seen from the youth in our community that we need to be aware of and responding to. So I'm curious, like when is HHS's mental health? When is this budget debated for that to support NPS? And what role do the school nurses play in complementing the school psychologists, which do fall in the new public schools budget?
I'm going to take the second part of your question first. So the school nurses are really there for, I'll say, physical health needs. So they're statutorily, they're required to administer medication, the medication management, and there's some screenings, and then review of vaccination status. That being said, we do recognize the child as a whole human and take a holistic approach to health. And so I think the nurses are equipped and do often respond to psychological or socio-emotional needs. And I think any of you are parents have certainly recognized this, that sometimes a child comes in with a stomach ache, and as the nurse is doing some assessment, recognizes that perhaps it's a anxiety versus GI illness, right? And so they certainly will respond and train, but they work closely with school psychologists because while they can do some of that initial care and assessment, they're not trained to provide mental health services per se. So that's where the partnership happens. In terms of when the budget gets activated, I'm not sure what you mean by activated.
If like when would we be saying, Riverside, can you please send a counselor to $123,383 here? You got it. Under counseling, you got or the counseling services that are, I think I heard you say, helps connect mental health services. Like when would people, and whether that's residents in general or students in schools, when would those be used?
Sure, that's a great question. So the interface one, the one where you call and get referrals, that is a contract we pay, and it's activated by people calling the call when you wait. So we work on trying to get the information out to both the community and the schools. The school psychologists, everybody sort of knows that the service exists. And then we work on publicizing it on the public side. And it's sort of the payment that we pay is for just the service, for access to that service. And so community members, students, teachers, whoever may be calls, and that's sort of how it gets activated. The Riverside outpatients, this is just money to them to offer services. And so that they are a sort of third-party outpatient mental health clinic. So again, it's just people calling them directly to get services. We can also refer people to them, as Councilor Maliki referred to earlier, but they also just insist that their own entity. The two other services I talked about that were school-based, the mobile crisis intervention clinician, this is one individual in a larger service that Riverside provides. So what our funding provides is not the service per se. Riverside already provides that service. We funded one person to be dedicated to the public schools. And what I will say is, they are new public schools, but they also serve the broader community. So they actually have responded to adults in the community as well. The schools are just supposed to be their primary focus, and then, for example, over the summer, if they're not responding to camps or something like that, then it's adults. So Riverside already has an intake number. So again, this is something that all of the school psychologists, all of the school staff should be aware. We work on making sure they know, and that's how it gets activated. So they would call and say, hey, we're having an issue, can you come and do an assessment? The youth outpatient one, again, that is directly between the schools. So while we pay for the service, it's directly between the schools and Riverside, and they work that out.
We pay for the service, but it's between the schools.
So HHS contracts it out, but we don't play a role in connecting Riverside with the patients, if that makes sense. So actually now this one I'm realizing we're all part of the same city.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the origin of this contract. This contract existed before I was in the position.
It's fine. We can move on. I think it's yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me. It seems like we generally were really trying to make sure that people are able to access resources that already exist in the community that are not necessarily public employees. So how do we make sure that they're connecting to the right, professionals that meet their benefits and meet their language needs and their scheduling needs? How do we make sure that they're able to get in and accessing? One of the things that is sort of occurring to me is we know that there are also mental health needs, for example, of our older adult community, which is the way where we're going next. But I would love to make sure that we are, that these services are something that every resident of Newton can be able to access, not just our students, which is really important, but also others. So, thanks.
Counselor Malfi.
I have a couple more questions. Kind of following up on that, when you say that we pay for access to the services, is that sort of we're paying just for sort of being able to make the connection and being able to get the information, but the person, the parent, or the person utilizing the counseling service, would they have to pay for it through their health insurance or out of pocket for the actual?
So a couple different things. The interface service is free. So that one, if we didn't contract with them, they would not offer it to our community. So anybody who calls to them is still free to that individual.
So it's kind of a blanket policy for anyone who calls up for Newton.
Correct, for interface, correct. For the Riverside services, they still bill, if I remember correctly, they only bill to Mass Health and Medicare. Part of their model is about being accessible, and so I don't believe there's out-of-pocket costs, but I would need to double check on that.
Okay.
They would still bill, and so what we're paying for is helping to subsidize that and make sure that there are out-of-pocket costs.
Okay. And I was curious about when you said you're updating the school nurse orientation program, and wondering how that was changing. It didn't look like there was. Is it sort of budget neutral? I didn't see anything that looked like an increase in training.
It's budget neutral. It's not, so it's an in-house, homegrown orientation program. Our current director, Sue Riley, did an amazing job of putting together a whole manual of all the policies, procedures, protocols, all that fun stuff. And a little bit of a history of school nursing, if you're curious. It's just something that needs to be updated every few years as things change, as new information comes out, and we develop new procedures.
Okay, yeah, I was curious what was changing in the.
Got it. It is budget neutral.
Yeah,
it's our staff time.
And I guess a few years ago we had trouble getting enough school nurses, and I see that it's contracted services that has gone way down. So are we pretty much filled with permanent employees now instead of the temporary contracted or
the agency nurses? We were, unfortunately, since this was published, we've had a little bit of a division that large with 31 nurses. You're always going to have turnover, and we have 2 more who just gave their notice for the end of the school year because life happens and babies, happen, and you move to be with your family and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, school nursing is a challenging role to fill. Healthcare in general is challenging to hire for, and then school nurses get paid less than what you can make in a hospital.
So you'll end up spending less on salaries and more on the.
We are hopeful because we have the position posted and we do have some qualified candidates. So fingers crossed, we won't have to spend too much on that, but time will tell.
Okay, all right, that's it for me.
All right, I see no other questions. I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask one very quick thing.
Sure.
What's the $1,100 for the human rights expenses?
So that's the Human Rights Commission. So that's things like when we do the flag raising in June, the Human Rights Awards Committee. Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion? Councilor Farrell has, I believe, moved approval for his straw vote for $5,777,377.
Thank you.
CIP and supplemental CIP?
Precisely what I was going to say. Thank you.
Completely. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Wright.
Sorry, I was kind of switching around. Just want to say one really great thing about Riverside, and I always send people there. It's such a wonderful resource. A lot of people know there's been a lot of mental health issues within my family, and you go to Riverside, it's kind of a clearinghouse. You don't know what you need, and they will tell you. You go there and they'll say, "Oh, you need to see a therapist once a week. Here's a list of names." Or it could be as severe as, let's call the ambulance, you need to go to the hospital now. But as a parent with children, you have no idea what you need or where you need, and they see you right away, and you get the ball rolling and helping with mental health, and it is such a great resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. No, Councilor Charm.
Sorry, I was glad that you asked about the human rights expense, but then actually your response didn't jive with what I saw on the page. So there's on page 4, there's $1,100 against human rights, but it's sort of a spattering of various small things like postage and custodial services and meals. So are all of those expenses for printing and postage, those are all for Human Rights Commission?
So yes, these are all under Human Rights, it's all Human Rights Commission. So there's a couple of events we run, for example, Pride Flag Raising and the Human Rights Awards in December. And so there's some refreshments, there's the actual award that's given. Sometimes it's in the evening, so there's usually custodial service.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Related to human rights, I know that there has been a lot of discussion about ICE and immigration and human rights. I think initially that website actually was under HHS, and now it is its own branch of our city website. So I'm not sure how that actually some of the services relate to HHS, but it occurs to me that there is sort of a similar need to be helping people navigate things in the same way that we need to for mental health. And a lot of those resources are now, thankfully online, and we have many categories of things that are at people's fingertips. But I am curious, if people do need support in that category, do they come to HHS?
Not often, and I think some of that might honestly be really protective of our government.
Yeah.
Certainly they don't know who we are as people versus, representatives of the government. And I think that's part of why, and we're not content experts in that area, which is I think part of why, we had started the website because that webpage, because that work is important to us as people and as a department, but I think it made more sense where it landed of just sort of more broader. Because if people come to us, honestly, what we'll be doing is listening to them, understanding their needs, and then quickly connecting them to someone else, because we are not equipped to provide that specific service.
Okay, that is all. You may move.
So it has been moved. We are now discussing, is there any further discussion on the motion? Or straw vote approval? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Can you add me as an aye? Sorry, I'm slow on the update.
Don't worry. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And our last department of the evening, Older Adult Service. Ms. Murray.
I'm going to bring Ashley Shigley with me, our deputy director.
Fantastic. What a year for Older Adult Services, huh?
We've been busy. I don't know if I'm able to share yet, but I'm going to try. You ready for me?
Are you able to? If you're a co-host, you should be able to think if you are.
Yes.
That's what all our prep work was, remember?
I know.
Yeah. See how well that worked?
Thank you for having us, counselors. I'm Mignon Murray, the Director of Older Adult Services for the city. This is Ashley Shaheen. She's our Deputy Director. We've had a very busy year. I have just a couple of slides, and then I'm happy to answer all of your questions. The Department of Older Adult Services serves 22,000 plus older adults in the city. We do programs, social services, transportation, volunteering opportunities, fitness, and we opened the Cooper Center 5 months ago yesterday. All that we do is really related to trying to stem isolation, trying to create, to be a wonderful place to be at any age and to grow older and hopefully keep people in their community and if that's where they want to be. So everything that we do relates back to that. So all the programs we offer, the events, partnerships we have, they're all about trying to create connection between people in any way which we can. As HHS has resource navigators, we have 2 resource navigators in older adult services who focus on residents who are 60 and older. We provide transportation in consultation with the planning department of GoGo Newton. We also offer other, information about how to connect with other transportation options. Volunteering is something that we have always done, but has even increased exponentially in the last couple of months since we opened Cooper. We have literally probably onboarded 100 volunteers and since we opened. We want to, this with a variety of things, all the way from I think I met with a high school freshman up into, people who are in their 80s and 90s. We opened the Cooper Center December 5th. It's a connection where all this happens in person. We're out in the community as well, but this is kind of our home base. And then those pictures on the right, below are where we started. Many years ago, as you all know, for many, many years, it's the old senior center, and now we are in the Cooper Center for Active Living on the same thing. So these are just some of the pictures from inside. Hopefully everyone has visited. If not, you should come and visit us. We've had over 28,000 visits since we opened. So this shows the middle picture there on the top is our multi-purpose room. It seats 150 people for a concert or a lecture. It seats 112 at round tables for more of a food-based program. The top right is the art room. Next to the art room, there is an actual ceramic studio as well with 2 kilns. We have active classes in there, both from our department, and recreation also offers some ceramic offerings there. Bottom left picture is the walking track. It now looks slightly different because this picture is from like opening weekend when the carpet wasn't down yet. So now it does actually have 2 lanes that goes around. The middle picture is obviously the gymnasium. There's 3 pickleball courts across as well. Basketball. Recreation has some badminton in there. We have a variety of different classes. Most of our fitness classes happen there. Some happen up in a fitness studio, which is up on the 3rd floor. The whole building, as you've all heard me say many times, is 33,000 square feet spread across 3 floors. We're open 7 days a week, which is very unusual for a building of this kind with senior focus. We really are a leader in the state, and are pushing to be that and model for not just Massachusetts but beyond. And that bottom right picture is kind of our cafe area. So that's right outside that multi-purpose room, that large room. And we opened the Cooper Cafe today. It was actually the first day of Cooper Cafe. So we did some soft launching back in March, and then today was the official first day. And we're going to be open Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays right now from 10 to 12. But in the budget, you will see an increase in that line item and staffing for that, so we can expand to 5 days a week. So this first day, we actually had 40 people through today who ate with us today. So this is our team. So the executive team, Ashley and myself, providing leadership for the department. We have a phenomenal executive assistant and front desk concierge, as well as multiple department assistants now who staff our front desk. When we opened Cooper, we were tasked with operating the building between 9 and 4 Monday through Friday, and the recreation department was tasked with staffing the desk when the evening hours and weekend hours. Mayor Laredo has tasked older adult services with staffing the building when we are operating the building. We had challenges that people would come in at, at 6 o'clock at night, we're still open. They would ask for a parking permit or about a class, and not having any of our staff there, we weren't able to service those people the way in which we all wanted to. So all the recreation programs that we can still happen. We work in concert together, but we're the ones staffing the desk and operating the building. The program team's kind of in the middle there, so that's Lana Seidman there on the right, and Daniel in the middle, and Hannah on the left. Not pictured is Elizabeth Lund, who does our communications. Alana has been with us. She's been with us over 11 years with the city, and one of the new positions is actually promotion for her to a program director position, so that she can kind of oversee all of the programming that happens in Cooper. So on the bottom right there, that's Rebecca and Henry. There are resource navigators. So they help folks with accessing benefits, signing up for GoGo. They speak a lot with caregivers who might be dealing with loved ones that have dementia or are moving to a different location, things like that. And then the bottom left, that is our chef, Jocelina, who is going to have a very busy week this week. So these are the new positions that are in the FY27 budget that you haven't seen before. So the program director, again, that's a promotion for a current program coordinator up to a program director position, so she can take a leadership over that part of the department. Currently, one of our program coordinators is handling volunteer coordination, but on the scale in which we run and the amount of people who want to volunteer with us, that's really a full-time position. So we're creating a full-time position for that, which will leave the program coordinator able to actually do programming on the scale we need and allow for volunteers to get the kind of response and placement that we want to be able to do. The facility coordinator is a new position to handle any of the scheduling that's going to happen in Cooper that's not an older adult services program. So that's the recreation department wants to run pickleball, or someone wants to have a birthday party, do a rental, you know, like a multi-purpose room, or rent a classroom. That's what this person's going to handle, as well as overseeing that front desk staff of the department assistants. We're hiring, so the program coordinator position is changing title to program manager. So we're getting an additional program manager, but that's actually a transfer from another department, from a position that had been created initially for Cooper, but then in the end ended up being hired by the recreation department to do programming at Cooper from their side. So now with the change of scope, that position is going to come over, you know, plan to come over to older health services. The additional Cooper staff I mentioned for the cafe, we're hoping to go to, you know, 5 days a week, so we need some more support there. And then the mayor has already, because we could fit it in our current budget, allowed us to hire some additional department assistants, who are those ones who are working that front desk. And then this is in your budget book, of course, but we're you know, 1% of the municipal side of the budget. And on the right-hand side there, you can see that there's an increase because of the cafe. There's an increase because of the programming support and the staffing there, and then the transportation line item for this year has stayed the same, has stayed steady. So there are some small changes, not small changes, there's some changes in some line items. For example, the dues and subscriptions line has gone up. You may see that's a result of a couple of things. One of which is a contract with an organization we have called Friendship Works. Friendship Works is a Boston-based nonprofit that does friendly visiting, friendly helping, and medical escorts for us. So they have had it's been a tremendous partnership, and they have been so busy with matching people with friendly visitors, providing medical escorts, that they actually couldn't keep the capacity going that we needed them to. So that is an increase in that contract of $25,000. So it was a $50,000 contract, and it's going up to $75,000. Ashley's been working closely with, as Law is dipping their hand into AI, so are we. Bridges AI is a company that we have now contracted with to do a texting service. So now a resident can text the main number at Cooper at any time and ask the question of, what are your hours? What's for lunch tomorrow? I need food. You know, if they do something like I need food, it flags up to the social services staff, and they see that and can follow up. And so that works off of all the information we kind of feed into it. So we're going to be, you know, playing with that as we go, but that's been up about a month now, I believe. And people are using it. So we're excited that's another way that people can reach us. But it's been wonderful that we've been able to expand that coverage at the desk, because we're now answering our phone until 8 o'clock at night during the week. We're there 9 to 4 Saturday and Sunday. So we're a place people can go. You know, the library isn't open on, you know, Sunday mornings, for example, but recently switched our hours. So instead of opening at noon, we're going to open at 9 a.m. So there's a place for people to go, and they can call and get answers to their questions as well. Answer anything you all have.
I'm sure there are questions. This is the time for council to ask those questions. So now is when I'm going to look around. Is Councilor Malachy?
That was kind of fast. Was that texting service part of dues and subscriptions?
Yeah.
And it lets people, instead of calling up with a question, they can just text their question to it goes to who's ever on the desk, or
it goes to AI.
It goes to AI.
If it's a very sensitive question, like I have nowhere to sleep tonight, or I need food, it will flag up certain staff members so that they can jump in and text in real time.
But if it's really basic, like, are you open now, or is there food today, or whatever,
the AI can tell.
It's pretty incredible. It's also available in any language that you text in, and it will respond in that language.
And it recognizes the language. What's it called?
Bridges.
Bridges. Okay. Okay. My quick question. Speaking of languages, you have a second language stipend? What's your language?
One of our resource navigators speaks Chinese.
Oh, excellent. Wow. Yeah.
I can come back to you, Kim.
No, I think that's good. Go on.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that my wife, Sally, is a volunteer at the center, so I'm not sure whether I can vote on this budget in that capacity, but she's come home with very positive experiences, so I just want to report that.
Sally's so wonderful working at our welcome desk. I believe every Monday morning, she's there greeting folks for us.
She values that time very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Bixby.
Thank you. So the Cooper Center seems fantastic. I was not been in since opening day, but that was such an exciting day, and going through, see people in and out all the time, and I've heard. I mean, we received so many notes from people, many of which were quite moving about how much it's meant to them to have that space. Hearing from neighbors and others similarly. So congratulations. And I guess I'm starting with all of that. Just when any department goes up as much as last year's has, it seems worth, asking some questions about it all. So can you talk, I guess generally the trajectory, as we look over the past few years, it has gone up significantly. What do you expect future years to look like?
I'm very much hoping to come in the near future and have a nice, normal, non-changing budget to the degree in which, of course, we've been growing. I think these increases were not inevitable, but wonderful. A lot of communities have built buildings like this in the last, not with ours, because ours is wonderful, but like very beautiful new buildings in the last several years, but they don't staff them to the appropriate levels of which they can be as great as they can be. The cafe.
I think it was expected to. I think even back a couple of years, I feel like this was in the projections folks had talked about. You had talked about staffing levels that were anticipated.
And we had dropped down, I think, a little too. So, Jane Clino in the old senior center, for 30 years, they were in the old space. But in the last 3 years that you see represented in budget, we were in temporary spaces. So the amount of programming we could do, the amount of things we could do was much condensed. So I think it is a natural growth. You're obviously not going to see 56% growth every year. So I think next year maybe there will be an area that we identify that there's more need in this area. Maybe that ends up being social service because we're so much more visible that more people are coming to us for assistance. I think that's of course possible, but obviously not to the degree in the last 2 years. This has been capacity building to get to the point to try to serve the community best we can with the building. The cafe, as I was going to say, was that this is a thing a lot of centers do is they build these big, great kitchens, commercial kitchens, and then they don't staff. And they say, in the future, maybe we'll staff, and then that never happened. So I was overjoyed that the last administration, funded us to get kind of started in that and saw that, and thrilled that the new administration is really pushing that boat out and seeing that it matters to people.
The social services piece was very interesting, and I think picking up on the last conversation we had and noting, I talk about this for a moment, but moving from Pennsylvania where, some friends went through things with family members, and I kept thinking, just call the senior center, help us again. And there is not that, at least in the town that I came from. And so to have those resources to help, especially when families are all over the country, all over the world, and the work that you do is fantastic. Can you talk a little bit more about the lunch program? So we got the kitchen, we got a tour, seems like we got staff. Like, how is it being? It's $5 for lunch now.
It's day one.
Yeah.
So it's there's a multi-tier pricing. So there's going to be anyone is welcome at the Cooper Cafe, regardless of age or community. You're welcome. It is a running like a cafe. There are costs associated with that. There's kind of baked goods. There's an entree kind of meal, coffee, juices, that kind of thing. We're going to be fine tuning our prices in the next couple of months. We put out the prices for the first month. There's kind of a community price, and then there's a 55 plus price. So 55 plus price is considerably less than the market rate price as well, and that's obviously purposely done. We're also going to be instituting kind of a scholarship system, if you will, or a system that for folks who are really in need of food or that extra assistance. Even we're identifying kind of ways to make that cost even less for those 55 and older who are in great financial need. So we'll be instituting that over the next couple of weeks or month. So the prices are individual for what the meal is, but there's kind of a price if you come in and you're 20, and then there's a price for if you're 55 plus.
And some of it's working with local restaurants, or?
So this program is, we have an in-house chef.
Totally in,
Yeah,
okay.
so we have Chef Jocelina, we have a kitchen assistant position. Those were the two positions that were in the current year's budget. So we're adding like an assistant kitchen manager and to be there on the days Jocelyn cannot be, and a couple of additional kitchen assistants so that we can have enough staff to run it as we need to in those additional days. So I mean, we anticipate the budget numbers that we put out are anticipating that we'll have around 100 diners a day, 5 days a week is what we're projecting. Again, we're in one and we're 40 people, so hopefully that is a good target, but we'll see how this goes. But it isn't in concert with any other restaurants. We do have a separate program, which is an Indian lunch program that also actually started this week. It is it's with a nonprofit that does Indian programming and lunches at several different senior centers around the state, and that is with a restaurant that brings in a meal, and there is a $5 charge for that. So that one is a $5 meal, but the cafe has to go them all. Yeah, I think that's probably
Lots of options. Is somebody connected? I mean, because one of the benefits of being in Newtonville in particular is there's so many fantastic local restaurants there. So, you know, it sounds like a great program, but we are also then not, you know, not sending people to local restaurants and not getting meals taxes. And I know that's not an option for all of your visitors. So
we don't charge meals tax for.
Oh, you do? Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Is somebody staying connected with the local businesses on that?
So I mean, we have such a great new economic development team that John, oversees us and works, very closely with economic development, and they've been kind of touching base with the local businesses and have thoughts of what outreach they can do to make sure, there's been, of course, I'm sure folks have heard our parking concerns as well, that's been a challenge for the neighborhood. But we, of course, and have been recommending before we even opened the cafe, if people were asking us about that there were free coffee shops right here, please, visit them. I don't think it's going to overtake, anything. I think it's kind of meant to complement our service. It's not meant to take business away from any other. We hope that people do, visit all the spaces in Newtonville and bringing in over 5,700 people, a month to Newtonville. Hopefully that is good for everyone in the neighborhood.
I think that's it for now, but that's really helpful to get a sense. Again, congratulations.
Councilor Char.
Good.
Councilor Char.
Great. I love the Cooper Center. I think it's beautiful. Every time I go in, it is filled with people who are all very happy and feel like they have a sense of place. I am going to ask a couple questions that I know are on a little bit of the edges of the mission. One is that, we are, and I think this came up actually when we did a tour with some of the counselors, noticing your Saturday hours end at 4. To me, and also Friday hours end at 4. I think there is an opportunity for event space rentals.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would love to see, or maybe I would love to hear more about what that plan is, and how can we, whether that's you mentioned birthday parties, but bigger events, receptions for people, like the bar mitzvah wagon, right? I feel like this is a wonderful space that has an awesome kitchen and a stage, and it just seems like it would be a no-brainer for us to be able to do that. And so I think when we had that conversation a couple months ago at the walkthrough, it was like we want to make sure that we're able to really, fulfill the mission in all of the programs that we can. It's core. And so now that you have some of the additional staff and budget coming in, where are you seeing there will be space for that?
There absolutely is. I mean, and then the fact that we close at 4 Saturday and Sunday just leaves opportunity for that, of course. And the facilities coordinator position, when we spoke back when you were touring, we were transitioning into, taking over the operations, and we were not staffed to be able to handle all of the rental inquiries. And we are trying to make sure that we maximize, the programming that we're in the building to do. But there's certainly space and want to do both of those things. And that, we have to, I would say, bear with us while we get the facilities coordinator on board, because we have over 100 programs that run every week. So finding those pockets of time and our programmers still being able to program out how they need to, it's going to take, some months to get that right. So, but we definitely intend to do that. And that's why that facilities coordinator position is going to exist. And we're eager to get them on board and up to speed as soon as we can. So we can.
So you think during this fiscal year,
oh yes,
you guys will begin to have like event rentals, and particularly I would think, when the center is, not offering other programs, it feels like there could be an effect of that. Can you? I know that the mission of the Older Adult Services group is obviously focused on serving older adults and those who support them, but the mission of the Cooper Center has also included more of the residents of all ages. Can you speak a little bit more? And when you talked about the cafe, you mentioned anyone is welcome regardless of age. Would love to hear more about how that's going when it comes to incorporating people who are not members of the older adult community.
It's an interesting phenomenon that, like, if you have a space that is only for seniors, that comes with its own stigma. So it's only in our, it's very purposeful decisions that, we're no longer, the senior services department or the older health services department, or you'll hear me say we're OAS. It's very purposeful that we don't use the word senior center on the front of the building. There's the Cooper Center for Active Living, and if you hear me refer to it, it's usually as the Cooper Center. And those are all very purposeful word choices, because to serve the folks that are the older adults in the city the best, I have to try to take the stigma away from participating with us, to be quite honest. So there are still people who say, I don't want to go in there because that's old. And I need to find some way to say, all the teenagers are coming, we're the cool place to be. Like, if they, come on. Because we do. There's, expressed students of Newton North who are coming in during the day. I had the cameras up from around the building on my screen today, and for a good part of the day, there was actually 2 high schoolers and a senior playing pool together. So those opportunities are happening. Are they always seamless? No. Because, some people are like, well, why are there younger people? They're younger people because we're all part of the community. This is a community space. I think of it very often as a library space. And, people can walk into the library and are welcomed there, but there might be a program that's for, seniors, or there might be a program in the library that's for children. Like, that's the same thing where you could come in, but those, our programs during the day are mostly, and, ours that we have in the weekend are focused on those 55 plus. But you can be in the library, you can be in the, if there's room, you can be in a program, you can, participate and come to the cafe. And I think it only benefits and helps me support and serve that 40 years of decades of 60 to 100 if it is a space that is more welcoming and more community friendly instead of being a very boxed kind of thing. I want us to be a welcoming place. And I think that's my goal. And part of that is embracing the community while keeping the focus and the resource on the population that we're focused on serving.
And will the other services and programs that I think you mentioned, the additional facility coordinator was going to be working on, will they be focused things not focused on older adults?
So they're going to schedule anything that's happening in the building that's not one of our older adult services programs. So our program director and her team are going to be planning all the wonderful fitness classes we do, all the lectures, all the events, all the socials, the cafe, all these things. But if it's the recreation department wants to offer a ceramics class, or it's the mayor's office has asked if they can do a session there, or HR wants to offer a training at Cooper, or there's a community group that wants to rent space for event they're having, that will be scheduled by that facilities coordinator. So they'll be making all those connections and plans and getting all that in.
And already Parks and Rec is doing a lot of youth classes that are of all different ages. Like I remember there were toddler basketball or something that was going on there. You mentioned a little bit of the friction, but how is that going? And I will reveal my cards here. I think you may remember a conversation that we had. So as everyone here knows, I have 2 young kids. And I was very excited to introduce them to the Cooper Center. We were there on a day that I think there was a big community event, and my kids were 3 seconds ahead of me, and they got onto the walking track, and someone came up and admonished. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. Someone came up and admonished me and told me that I needed to put my children on. And that was really not welcoming and inclusive. And I appreciate that that is not the vibe that we're going for. And I would love to be, like the high school students feel welcome, and that we have those sorts of intergenerational things. And I, of course, understand that we want this to be a place where everyone can enjoy, and that includes seniors or older adults, that it is meant for. But I think there probably needs to be like some sort of communication or guidance or something that as we work through this, we think about how do we actually live up to that ideal.
And I would love for all of the community to treat everyone of each other with respect and dignity.
And that doesn't always happen in a lot of ways.
We can all have.
Yeah.
I've spent a good part of my week this week actually talking about ping pong, because we changed how, something was happening, how ping pong was being run, and then this group, of course, we don't want anyone to have the opportunity like what happened to your family. And we will work on making the culture, and that comes from training the staff, creating that environment, making everything welcome. And that will take time. And we are only several months in. We're still training staff. We're still getting everything set. So it will hopefully greatly improve, and that will pass on to participants. But if I had the magic wand to make everyone be wonderful to each other, I don't understand why people speak to each other they do. But we will, work hard to create a culture where everyone feels welcome.
Thank you. I agree with you. I'm often mystified by some of those things, like in that moment. I think that it comes with practice of like recognizing that like, hey, there is toddler basketball that sometimes is, meant to be in this sort of space, and we are doing this intentionally. So I would just encourage, the places like the cafe and other spaces to make sure that we have at least a healthy enough sprinkling that it is, it is clear that it is intentional. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Farrell.
My questions were much more mundane than these. I'm just curious, are you keeping track of, do people sign in when they come in?
So we ask everyone of every age actually to get a Cooper card. So it's a key tag. It has little, our logo on it. And it's meant to, when you come in, there are 2 touch screens, you scan your card, and then you press what you're there for. So we ask everyone to get one if they will, because it helps us, know who's in the building. It helps us know how many people are going to the walking track, how many people. It helps us make those. If we look at the data and only 5 people signed in for yoga, only 5 people sign in for yoga, there could have 30 people in that room. So we do ask people to sign in. So beyond that tracking though of our programs, which we do ask people to do, we also have a people counter on the door, on both doors. So that's where I can get my broader numbers from of how many people are actually visiting. So I have my data from the system that we track, which is called, my senior center is the software name, my active center is its online registration. And then Cooper card is what we ask everyone to get. They get it at the front desk. They're free. And if your 15-year-old wants one, I encourage them to get it, anyone, so that we can, if you're there at the walking track or the pool room, you can scan it, and that tells me too what breadth of people are using certain services.
Part of that for me is understanding the reach around the city,
Mhm.
and how people from different neighborhoods are using it. Particularly from Ward 8, we're kind of like far away, but they're not looking for an accounting on that. I just think at some point it would be really interesting to be able to say that people who are responding from around the city. And I congratulate you. I think you're doing a fabulous job. You are in your first few months. So just like the administration, and you say, why can't you do this? We've only been here 4 months, but I do congratulate you, and I think it's a very difficult job for you to do, and particularly to maintain the atmosphere that you should expect. But the primary purpose is for those of us who are a little older. Anyhow, I congratulate you, and I want to thank you very much for supporting an effort by a resident in Oakville Park about the superintendent's effort to have a tutoring program. And I'm not sure I'm allowed to say tutoring. A senior middle school mathematics support group. And
the homework club?
Yes.
Thank you, the homework club, which is really terrific, and the superintendent holds a lot of hope for that. And if it works well in this first year, we hope to get it in all 4 schools, or 4 middle schools. And clearly a big piece of that is getting the seniors who are willing to work with the students. And I'm sure within the thousands of seniors in the city, there've got to be 8 or 10 this year. And then expand. But thank you for supporting that. Appreciate it.
I'd be hugely surprised if she doesn't get a great response.
I hope.
The volunteer response we've seen from people wanting to volunteer has been astronomical. So I have spoken with the resident who's putting the program together with the schools and such word that I think that she will get a good group of people. And we're actually scheduled an information session or 2 for her to speak to volunteers about the program in June. So you'll see that we're going from a bi-monthly newsletter to a monthly newsletter. So there was a May that was out. June will have the description of the info session.
And I know all the city councils have been asked to spread the word around, I believe. But it's another of the great opportunities for seniors and young people to work together. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Baker.
I've been asked to ask a question of you about how you deal with parking, specifically not for city volunteers and Newton residents, but non-resident volunteers. Have you solved that issue?
Oh, if I could solve part of it. I think parking was always going to be identified as a challenge. I think what you're referring to is, unfortunately, we don't have any additional parking that we can provide for volunteers who are there, maybe longer than than their parking pass would work, if they have an older adult parking pass. And certainly we have many volunteers who come, and instructors who come from outside of the city, who so don't qualify for a older adult parking pass and are dealing with, parking in Newtonville. And just unfortunately, there isn't a resource as of now that I can give them. We have challenged, getting spaces for our staff in the neighborhood to be able to get in. So I unfortunately have not solved the issue of how we could provide a better experience for those volunteers who are coming from out of town.
Okay, I appreciate the difficulty because it's a scarce resource. Thanks.
Councilor Maliki.
Thanks. So this was another department where I'd love to see like an org chart with names filled in, because it was kind of confusing and trying to match the personnel detail with the org chart. And for example, is the building manager the same as the facilities coordinator?
So as this was all being put together, job descriptions are being made. So the facility coordinator is the same thing as the building manager.
Okay.
There were different drafts as the budget book was being put
Yeah. So I'd
together.
love to, and especially since so many of them are kind of public facing people, I'd love to know who's who. And on the in the department assistants in the personnel detail, there's 2 named people, and then there's 3 that say shared personnel. And is that the sharing with Parks and Rec, or who's it being shared with?
But they're just shared FT. Essentially, they're part-timers, but how they put them in the book whereas shared personnel. So there's actually 7 that were in past. They were called admin assistants. I'm going to be transitioning to department assistant, who's their name, because I think it's more apt. But when the time the book was done, there were 2 that were hired. We were in the process of hiring the others.
Yeah.
So that's why their names don't appear.
So there's like more names than 5 positions.
So there's
because they're working part-time.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It would be great to have a
so you can go on our website. We'll give you the org chart. We'll give you everyone's title, a bio, and a picture.
I saw the pictures.
So,
yeah. I had another question about the Shine program. You provide the space, but is that kind of a separate volunteer program that they just use the space, but they're not people or volunteers anyway aren't in your budget?
So absolutely. So the Shine program is there's federal money for it, but in the state of Massachusetts, there's also state money for it. In other states, it's called SHIP. In Massachusetts, it's called Shine, serving the health information needs of everyone on Medicare.
Yeah.
So we have, I believe, 7 Shine counselors who are assigned to us, but they get trained by a regional Shine organization, which has paid staff, and they get all the Shine volunteers anywhere get trained in a very specific curriculum and then get assigned to different locations.
Okay.
So we have 7 who are assigned with us, and we provide them the office space, we take the appointments for them, and provide that technical and admin support, but they are hugely dedicated volunteers who
So
spend a lot of time.
there's no specific money in the budget going toward that. It's just part of the job of the people at desk.
Yeah, the state pays for that training and their infrastructure, and the volunteers are placed with us. So there's no cost to us to have them there, besides us giving administrative support to the program.
And is so it seems like it's very oversubscribed, because I know from calling to get appointments, and they're very helpful. Is the constraint the number of volunteers they have, or is it also constrained by the number of kind of little office spaces that we have for them?
So, I mean, we have limited office space. That only is most challenging during open enrollment, when there's, the counselors even add additional appointments to try to help as many folks as they can during that period from October to December. But
and there's another one kind of from January to March, like for people.
Well, and there's always need for it, but that kind of middle of October
new people turning 65 or whatever.
Absolutely. So part of it is we don't get to choose how many we have. That's assigned by the regional Shine office. And they are only able to, from their funding, train and bring on a certain amount of them in their whole district for a year. So most towns and cities around us have 1 or 2 Shine counselors, and we're fortunate that we have many. But it is a confusing process that we've been dialing in about making an appointment, because we have some Shine counselors who do it in person, and we have some Shine counselors who do it on Zoom or by phone. And that, so there's a variety of different ways. And so if you call, someone might be there on Thursday, but they do Zoom appointments and you want someone in person. So we've been working with the AI and with the staff to try to find a more simplified version, because during the regular month, I don't think it's overly subscribed, is it? I think there's usually room, but there's a lot of moving parts.
And how many sort of little office spaces do you have? Like, how many can be working at a time?
Yeah. So there's usually only 1 there at a time, except for during open enrollment, 1 there or 2.
Oh, so there's basically 2 spaces. And I also have questions about kind of the age thing. For programs run by OAS, I have the sense that there are things like ceramics that spaces fill up as soon as the class opens. Am I correct there? So for things like that, is it only for 55 plus people, or priority 55 plus people? How does that work?
We actually, this is an interesting one, because usually it is those 55 plus who are in most of the classes, and obviously we want to give preference to. We actually had a cooking class that's coming up that we had someone actually sign up with a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and we were kind of like, and we actually, there wasn't a waiting list for the class. There was still room in the class.
Yeah.
So we allowed it.
Okay.
So it's,
so that's like an adult plus 2 kids.
Yes. So we're going to be finding those spots, and we also will, as we've been gaining capacity, add additional sessions on things. So we always encourage anyone, if they call or they register and it's full, to please register anyway for the wait list.
Uh-huh.
Because then we can see that there were 20 people who wanted to get into that class, and we can say, we're gonna do another session of it that next semester. Whereas if people don't, and we only see one person on the waiting list, we're like, well, maybe this is a good fit. This is the only class we need. So we'll be adding more. So hopefully it's not quite as anticipated sign up as it has been for some of our classes specifically have our sign up very.
So if you have a class that's sort of oversubscribed, do you make sure that all this, like, see the spaces, the limited spaces go to seniors as opposed to going to the 40-year-old or whatever?
I don't think and a lot of times in most buildings like this, in most communities, it's very self-selecting that you're not going to have 40-year-olds who are signing up. Obviously we attract a broader demographic, so it could happen more often. I think it's not something I've noticed has happened significantly now, but it's something we'll keep an eye on, because obviously we do have our mission of our group, but because we do encourage everyone to get a Cooper card, it means that not just seniors have Cooper cards. So someone could go on and register, but it's something we'll keep an eye on and if we need to make specific policy for it, we will.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the ping pong, and I also somehow got the sense that seniors were sort of feeling the high school kids were coming to playing ping pong and taking up the tables, and there wasn't enough space for the seniors. Is that the issue, and how has that been resolved?
There's been a variety of ping pong related issues. The long and the short of it is that for the weekends, for example, during the week it generally is seniors, and it's we've made it by reservation right now, and it's
by reservation. Okay.
On the weekends we're going to have it in 2 rooms, 3 tables, 2 rooms. 1 room will be by reservation, the other room will be drop-in. So if you want to make a reservation and know your table is there, you can. If you want to just stop by and take your luck and come, you can. So we're hoping that will help ease kind of both people's styles and all generations. And we find that during the week it's actually been working pretty well, and it has been mainly seniors, sometimes younger folks, but mainly seniors. And we'll get there.
And are the reservations on weekends, are those only for seniors, or can
anyone
high school
get
reservations? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands. Councilor Carroll.
Were
you looking to make a motion for the crowd vote to approve a budget of $2,083,070?
So moved.
On CIP?
Thank you,
man. Any discussion on that motion? All right,
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain simply because I'm not sure my wife's volunteer status. So, but I just want to indicate that that's why.
Baker, you're out of order. Any nays? Any abstentions?
Yes, one.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Totally understandable. That is 501. And Mr. Bravo to approve. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you.
That concludes our business tonight. Can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, folks online.
Thank you.